Hey, it's Shabes, and welcome to another edition of AniTube Digest, where we go over the best and not so best anime YouTube videos to come out this month of March 2023. You know, I said I was going to do bi-monthly digests to avoid this problem of having 30 videos to watch in a short period of time. But then I ended up taking that week in the middle of March to work on my Naruto video and finish my Naruto video, which I did. Hell yeah, and it's out. It's all done. That is all the Naruto I will be talking about. Yeah, that's why I was like, I guess I'll do an end of month digest again. And that's okay. In the first video, and I'm going to go in order of length again. Whatever, that's just how monthly digests go. We have an Otaku Box video of AMV for Do It Yourself. And kind of the notable thing about this one, the way that they use like paper cutouts and like some kind of handcrafted type of stuff and integrating that with the footage, I think was really unique and interesting. And what's also really cool about this is I did happen to catch that I'm pretty sure the creator, like the author of Do It Yourself, either the author or like the official account or one of those. Some person actually connected with the project actually quote tweeted it, and I like shared it and everything, and that was just like so cool. Congrats on that. I think that's all the attention you need, really. Like that's awesome. And yeah, I did like the integration. I could find it to be very difficult, but I think that what really worked with it was the synchronization of the music. And I also liked the music choice was very, I don't know if it was from the OST of the show or something else, but it wasn't really like a poppy type of thing, and they weren't trying to tell a particular narrative necessarily. Although I think it was what they're trying to do is sort of like, I don't know, recapture the dynamic that Purin has with Serufu, and kind of emphasizing on that more so than the other cast. I mean, and that's fine, and that's totally fair. Kind of a good dynamic, but not like the dynamic of the whole show that they focus on. But like that's fine. But I think that given the music choice and then that structure of it, I think it was really comfy and nice reminisce of this seasonal show that, you know, as seasonal shows do, they'll come and go, right? So yeah, I just really appreciate it, and I just want to shout that out. I think that's something that's really cool. I think you guys should check out. Yeah. Trigger is rebooting their YouTube channel. They've had it for about 10 years, and they're finally going to try to do something a little more with it. I think they have a particular person that they're collaborating with, some staff person or whatever, who's like behind the camera. And they've shot a couple of stuff already. They've been doing some interviews with the director. It's all mostly geared towards promoting their current release of Gridman Universe, the Dynazenon and Gridman connection, the connective tissue movie basically, that Amamiya's directing. And so they have a director with Amamiya, an interview with Amamiya, and they follow the producer, I forget his name, who mentions that like he's like, I've ever since Trigger kind of started, he's intended to just be kind of like a assistant director, like kind of not on the front lines, as he's been with these past couple of projects. So it's been kind of like that for a while. So he's like, yeah, I'm finally going to actually kind of step back, and I want to use that opportunity to kind of work more with the YouTube channel a little bit more. It's Otsuka. Yeah. And so like they've made a couple of vids so far. But I just wanted to shout out the announcement video because it's interesting, and it has everybody in it. It has Otsuka, Amamiya, Imaishi, Yo Yoshinari. I'm so sorry I don't quite remember the other person that's in there as well, but at least in this particular video. And I like the dynamic they have. It's just very like kind of formal and late little, but like casual. Like formal and casual, two different things, but like they have like the format of like a Japanese YouTube video, which I think has a very particular kind of style to it. And then the person producing these videos, who's behind the camera, is like, this is what you do, and they're like, you know. So it's sort of like it's in that format, but they're not really like full chested and endorsing it. Sort of, they're just like, yeah, they wanted me to be in the video, so yeah. And then just kind of talking very casually amongst each other, and it's just a nice dynamic, and it's just exciting to see. Yeah, just wanted to mention that. I think it's really cool. Bob released a couple of those like discussion videos, which I really liked. I just kind of like listening to them in a passive sense, and I don't feel like there was as much to comment on them as like a physical video. But I definitely recommend those two. It's like why anime recommendations fail, and I'll never finish my backlog, and that's okay. Just like common community problems, and I like that he kind of. It seems that he's talking mostly off the cuff here, and I just found that was a good format for it. And he's been on YouTube for so long that I feel like he can do that, and pretty whenever he has the idea, whenever he's spurred upon to do it, I guess. But I'd love to see more of those, to be honest. But the video I do want to mention besides that, it was kind of in tandem altogether kind of deal. I know I don't talk about one video, but is what it is. It's just like, yeah, again, I just love Bob's like productivity with his channel, and the projects and stuff, and sustaining that like that drive and everything, because it's especially when he's getting into these bigger series, and now he's working on his actually massive like 60s guide type of deal, which is gonna as definitive as anything's been on YouTube in terms of this era of anime. I think it's going to just be freaking indispensable. It's like really, really important stuff to me, at least, that I think he's doing, that I really appreciate. But I wanted to mention his Pandico Panda video because I'm a big Pandico Panda fan. I only just watched it like this year or like a couple months ago or something, but like I stan this movie. I really like. I should watch it again, to be honest. It's just so fun, and I think Bob kind of hits it pretty well with it being tranquil and like very refreshingly different for other series up to that point. It's actually pretty, like when he says he calls it a tranquil anime revolution, it is interesting how when you compare it to the other series at that time, that like the enjoyment comes from just the scene and not like the plot that's happening, and feels like things have to constantly be moving. I do think there is something to be said about slice of life anime existing in 60s anime, even though it feels a little bit more like a modern convention. And I do think he has a point about the difference with what Panda brings to the table, and what ultimately Heidi, I think, ends up. This is like a building blocks for Heidi, basically. The European setting, and like the cute girls and the animal relationship and everything. It sounds weird when you put it like that, but it's just you know what I mean. But yeah, like putting it in the context of everything that had happened up to that point versus where it would go, I think makes a lot of sense. I like that he delved a little bit into the production history of it's kind of in the context of failure. Takahata coming off of Horus, which is an important movie, but it didn't do well at the time, so he kind of just and Miyazaki as well, trying to pitch this idea with Pippi Longstocking getting the cold shoulder and everything. So this is sort of like the next thing that they do kind of deal. And I'm happy it was popular enough to get a second thing, and then just kind of sustaining it. And that's why they didn't have too much in the. I mean, they have Heidi basically. It's kind of the next thing, and that thankfully like is their first explosive success kind of deal, I think. But anyway, I just like that that context he gives here of kind of how important this is up to that point. But I was thinking about it because it's like, at least with Sally the Witch and Ako-chan, which are the two series I'm going through right now, they're pretty episodic, like, standalone adventures. And I think he's right that like it's not those shows are not necessarily just existing. It's like the entertainment is them just kind of like being with each other, and then like in this mood, or it's raining or something, or it's like it's not capturing an atmosphere the same way in those two shows, because I think those two shows, they're a little more plot centric. They're not like narrative driven or something. It doesn't have like a huge complex narrative or something, but it's just like stuff has to be happening. And it feels like for Sally, at least, not so much for Akko, but sometimes for Akko, when they can't think of something to do, they have to make it a chase. They have to make some action thing. They have to kind of like have something going on, and it's not the most entertaining thing sometimes. It often isn't, to be honest with you. It's not something that I like the most out of Sally or Akko's episodes. I think is like the weird wacky stuff. Even Akko lately, the past couple episodes I've watched, they've been doing a little more episode like experimental, like not taking place in the town that they're growing up. But like this is like a very down to earth series, and then these past few episodes have been like one of them's been a dream sequence, like the whole thing was a dream, but they're like on the moon and shit. And then another one, like there's no explanation. They're just sort of like in a jungle having like a safari adventure with pirates. And it's like, okay, sure, good, nice to know that you tried this, but it's not. I don't need it. at least, that's not what I'm here for. Like, what I was expecting when I click episode 1, right? And like, okay, this is the kind of show, and you set your mindset in that way. But it's interesting, I guess. But you know what I mean? And so I agree with what Bob's saying about Panda Copanda being kind of a revolution of sorts. Of like, this can be successful potentially, and then it turns out it was because they have Heidi 2 years later, and Heidi completely changed the game for anime. I think it's really important, setting off not just the World Masterpiece Theater stuff, but like even other studios kind of try their own like European drama journey type of thing, like Candy, or I know it's based on manga and everything, but Toei taking a chance on that instead of the magical girl stuff that they had been doing up to that point. Or even with Madhouse trying with kind of competing almost with World Masterpiece Theater, doing Nobody's Boy Remy and Takarajima of Treasure Island, you know, and just there's a lot of stuff that Heidi starts kind of deal. Anyway, but yeah, I did really like the as a precursor for sure, not just for like Totoro and everything that people kind of cite Panda Copanda, and then Bob also cites as well, but just in that vein, I guess. Yeah, it was really interesting, and I enjoyed the video a lot. Yeah, MercuryFalcon is back. He had like a voice sort of throat thing for a while, and you know, working on other stuff and watching things and everything. You know, keeps him. So I'm happy that like you know, he puts stuff out when he's like he has an idea and you know, it's he's not like on that main. He's not like as grindy as I guess some other YouTubers feel sometimes to me. Not for me to brag. I too am on that grind. You know, at least I think so. But yeah. But I like this Cardcaptor Sakura video he did, which like the title and thumbnail really makes you think that like this is the whole video and talking about the situation. But the situation really only takes like 2 minutes to explain, and I think he did a very good job talking about it and sort of giving you the why it's so frustrating, and the actual controversy and situation that I had never heard of actually, and I think it was an interesting time capsule. A thing to point out for Japanese viewers, like Japanese viewers kind of go through a similar thing that we go through when we read manga on a weekly basis or watching anime on a seasonal weekly basis, right? Where we're really invested in seeing the thing, and then we get to the last episode, and in this case, it's a broadcasting kerfuffle that just happens to, you know. I think MercuryFalcon also does a good job with like painting the picture and everything. Like, look, it's 2000. There's no stream. There's no record. There's no home video release. There's no rerun. You're fucked, you know. So they kind of have to like hear from secondhand accounts of what happened. It's like, ooh, wow. Because I won't explain the whole controversy, but it's really interesting. I think John does a really good job with it. But then for the most part, it's mostly just kind of a general Sakura video, which I liked, and I think he has really great points to make about various controversies or things about Sakura that people bring up all the time that he kind of throws his 2 cents in, which I think he has a very good take about, of kind of missing the point when people complain about the relationship issues, like the relationship weirdness, because like it's a weird, like on one hand they'll be super happy about Sakura exploring these concepts of love that kind of endorse, or, you know, I don't want to say agenda, but I mean, I guess I did. No, you know, but like people are so happy that it has gay representation. And then, but like, oh, but it sucks. It has this other type of love that I don't approve of, or have genuine moral ethical problems to it. And then that is not to say that the gay stuff is conflating the two. And John doesn't either. I think what John is trying, it's like Sakura in general is from her perspective, and it's exploring romance in all the different ways that it can manifest without any bias or like judgment or weird, like it's not making a decision about these things. It's just showing you that it happens, you know? And I think people conflate showing something in a story or a piece of media and automatically calling it an endorsement. Like, it's like, just because it shows this weird teacher student dynamic, it just means that that's fine. That's what it's trying to say. And I don't think it is, you know, or at least not directly. And I think John's analysis of like, it's from her perspective and she's being completely non-judgmental about seeing Sharon, yeah, that's his name, as a romantic rival to this boy that she likes. And then she's like, yeah, she doesn't think that's weird or anything like that. And then, you know, the anime, regardless of whether the anime, you know, de-emphasizes it or whatever, the fact that it's like, it's showing that, it's just showing a different avenue. It's just, and it's not even a big point, guys. I didn't even remember it. When I watched the show, I don't even remember it, dude. Maybe because I only watched the anime, I guess. But like, okay, I don't know. I guess just as more of my take than John's take, but I just like John's analysis of handling of that theme in the show. I think that was really interesting. Yeah, it's just, and it feels more like his general thoughts about it, and I like that. I like that it didn't feel like, it's not like a formalized review, and he's marketing it in a way that's like, here's this really interesting tidbit you've probably never heard of about Sakura. Kind of like with Ninku for me, where I kind of couched it in like, this is like this connection to Naruto, but I kind of use it as a way to talk about Ninku in other ways that I find interesting, and as well, not like a review the same way. I just like this format in general because it's sort of like you don't really fully know what to expect, but you're still getting that promise at the end without like this tension of the title. I've noticed in some of these videos, at least in digest, I think what happens, weirdly enough, the viewer, the audience, they're watching the video, and unless it's in full screen, the title is right there under the video. They have that in their minds for, like, unconscious or not, it's in their minds the entire time. And sometimes the title is so weird and long or like whatever that like it doesn't affect the experience. But like the title should influence the content, especially because they clicked on it. Like they clicked on it, and then like that's your take. They want to know why the video is called that. You know, the title is the reason they clicked on it. And so the tension ends up for some of these videos, and I'll probably point out certain ones that made me feel this way. But like, I, at least as a viewer, get this nagging voice in the back of my head, like noticing the title, and I'm like, why haven't they talked about that yet, or what's going on? And I did have that sort of thing with this video, but I think it was like, I guess it was because I recognized that it was going to happen. It's a story that happens at the end of the video, and I think it ultimately it worked out in this case. Yeah, I feel like it just worked out in this case. I don't know why. It's just like I don't know. It just kind of did it. But then there's others where I'm just like, I don't know, certain things. But yeah, I enjoyed the video a good deal. Yeah, really good. Yes, the FUNKe video. Junji Ito's many macabre endings. This is like the first time I think that he's really talked about manga or anime in any capacity. I'll double check, but like, I feel like I haven't watched every one of his videos, especially because he's been making videos for a very long time. I think, yep, okay. His first video that at least is public on his current channel is 9 years old. So we'll probably be going on 10 sometime or other. Good for congratulations. But he kind of started as like a Team Fortress 2 type of skit stuff and other things. And his kind of current persona of his animated character, he's very known for his really impressive style and delivery. He's also a very multifaceted, talented guy where he's like, I think he designs games. At least that was my assumption, or games I would make if I knew how, I guess, is the for where I was thinking about. But he really exploded around, yeah, around this point where he's like he has his own like avatar and stuff, and then his editing just kind of got better and better. But yeah, he's talked about games, he's talked about music, he's doing certain things, but he's been mostly known for games, I think. But then yeah, this video suddenly wants to talk about Junji Ito. Like, okay. And the thing I admire most about this video is he adopts the same philosophy I've recently kind of come into, where it wasn't so much my Naruto video, but if I were going to talk about manga more, I really like this approach of just showing the book, showing the 2-page spread, and not just like a 2-page spread, like when it's one continuous piece of art, especially because Ito doesn't really do it that often. Apparently, it doesn't seem that way. At least I think he only showed one 2-page spread in this whole video, but he shows a ton of other material, and it's all in like this book format. And of course, he is much better talented, more like than I am, and he just knows Blender or After Effects or some program that he used to get this to work, that it actually looks like a book that's flipping fucking pages, and not something jank like what I did for Ninkyu, which took me forever to figure out and still doesn't have the most, whatever, but it kind of worked. And he does a similar thing that I do, of course, in that video, where I'm flipping the pages. I'm not necessarily flipping to the entire book. I'm flipping to pages I want to show you. And it wasn't until like halfway through the video did I realize that like he's doing a lot of notes and little jokes, and he's highlighting certain panels, but he's dimming other ones, and he wants to show you specific things, but it's in a format that's a widescreen like this, and so the book is only like this big on the screen, so it's kind of hard to see some of the panels he's highlighting, and he's talking so fast, like not fast I guess, but like he's talking so much and kind of ramping through going through a lot of examples and stuff, that the pages are going so quick that it was really hard for me to like feel like he's landing a lot of points, which like, I mean, I'm not like an Ito video connoisseur, but I've seen a couple videos about his work, and this did kind of feel like another one. It didn't have that many original points to say, to be honest with you. And there's another thing about it. Again, I think that he is an elevated video craftsman here, where it's not just the style and his avatar and everything like that, but it's also just like he has this narrative where he starts it being like, I'm going on a trip and I can only bring one Junji Ito book, which one? And I'm having trouble choosing because they're all so good. Or it's not that they're all so good, it's more so that like they're all very similar. They all give kind of, his argument I think at the beginning is like, they all give a very similar experience, and so it's sort of hard to choose one to bring, I guess. And then, at the end of the video, spoilers, he just chooses Uzumaki. And it's like, yeah, that is the one. Yeah, that's the one I have, at least. It's the one I've read to completion for sure. I'm not a huge into Ito or anything, but, And yeah, I guess to me, it just felt like a lot of similar points. I feel like he obviously makes the page turn, point, like at the beginning, like one of the first things he says, and it's like, there it is. And then, what else you got, And I don't think anything in that was necessarily poor or tedious or something. But again, yeah, I just felt it felt kind of very samey, I guess. And it was weird where obviously the video was called his many macabre endings, where he's specifically focusing on the ending of these stories, which thereby doesn't mean he's spoiling a lot of them. And it felt really, I just didn't feel great about him spoiling so many in such rapid succession. But then suddenly halfway through the video, when he goes a little slower, he just suddenly starts to decide, I'm going to leave it to, and he has this little like cute narrative, like script device of like, you wouldn't believe me even if I explained it to you. But he's not going to show you because he's teasing. But you've already spoiled like 15 of his stories, dude. I'm perfectly, like, you already did it, so what? You're just withholding information at that point. You know what I mean? It was just kind of frustrating to me that he would just kind of have this like little tease thing. And then he all, and there's another thing about his craft of the video and everything. He not only has this little narrative premise that he has, and this little cute little turtle character that speaks in Morse code and everything. That's cool. It feels like it's more of an experience and less like a YouTube video, right? But then he has this, like, kind of halfway through the video, he introduces this, like, you're probably noticing why this is on all these manga are on a box, and you're wondering what's in the box. I was like, I was not thinking that. I wasn't really thinking that at all, actually. You're just kind of pointing that out. He's like, look at this mystery. Isn't it cool? I'm like, yeah, I guess. Like, I don't know if that was really earned. What would have earned it was a couple minutes later, the box jumps up and there's something in it. And he's like, ignore that. And it's like, okay, that would have been the one to put at the beginning, because then I'm like, whoa, I thought that was a table and it's a box. But then he decides to point out that, look, it's not a table, it's a box. Isn't that interesting? Oh, wonder what's going on there. I'm like, come on, dude. And maybe he's trying to, that's a commentary on how Ito describes his stories, but I don't feel like Ito would do that often. I don't know. I don't know. It just didn't work for me, right? It just, okay. He does pay it off at the end, and it's a cute joke, but yeah, it was weird. But I obviously love his videos. I really respect them, and it's more of just like, holy shit, dude, kind of in a way. And again, I think the overall format of showing Ito's work by showing the 2 pages and the way that he moves the actual page turn is fantastic. And that it was just that, like, there was a lot of information he was putting in there with, like, little side notes and hiding in such a way that was just, it wasn't easy for me to appreciate, especially for how fast this would go. I feel like that was something to kind of take into consideration. It just kind of ends up being a blur. You're just showing too much to the audience, and then the audience is like, I'll just listen. I'll just listen to what you're saying. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, come on. I don't know. That was just my feelings on it. But mad respect to the video, of course. Yeah. Inakyu celebrating 30,000 subscribers, as well as talking about this feedback. It's just feedback. Yeah, okay. Like, these awful fucking comments that she would get on this video that blew up about Shonen Jump discourse. I'm like, your female characters have a lot to be desired. Like, okay. But, like, and it was, I get it. There was a lot of stupid comments, and I'm not going to defend any of them. I was just... But the way that I think the one point that she brings up in reference to those comments of stuff, which is like, I can talk about shonen, I can demand more for from these stories, like, sure. And it's like, yes. But I mean, I didn't watch that video, and I don't want to. Just what made me think about it from watching this video about being a girl that likes anime, which is general discussing of hate and everything, and like acting in this space. And I think she's able to turn it into something really positive, which I really enjoyed. Just to put that as just one point I want to make is the whole thing with these female characters in these shonen stories. Unfortunately, it's not really about them, and look, I want more from them too. I would want more Hinata. I would want more, but I've seen people making videos about how they're wasted characters and stuff, and it's like, well, not really, because all the characters are players in the story of Naruto. And if it was focusing on Shikamaru for most of the story, but it's not about Naruto, then it's like, well, why isn't this called Shikamaru? There would be some weird tension there, and I feel like that would be, I get valid criticism. I don't want to really label certain things as valid or not. I feel like this is people's perspective, and I think it's totally fair to want more of these characters, for sure. But at the same time, it's not their story. And if it was, but look, and I'm also really glad that, like, I don't know if you mentioned it in that particular video, but there are Shonen Jump stories that have female protagonists. Hibari-kun, Promise Neverland, the recent Akane Banashi, uh, there's these stories that like if they mess up the female character in that story, who's the central character, then yeah, then like that is a pretty significant problem. But it's like I just don't think the weaknesses, like Otaku and Hero Academia being kind of a mid to like not doesn't get that much represent, or mishandled in some way. I feel like the same argument could be made about other characters in Hero Academia. The vast majority of Class 1A don't really get anything, regardless of gender. So it's just sort of it's sort of to taking the story as a whole and like what is it focusing on, what is its themes, and that sort of thing. But sorry to make this about that. It was just something I wanted. And again, I know I'm not coming from a wholly constructive place because I didn't watch the video, and I'm being transparent about that. I just wanted to bring that. It just made me think. Just makes me think. It makes the gears turn. Anyway, no, but I really genuinely like this video a lot because she's talking about she's using it as an opportunity to see how far she's come, how much she's wanted to do YouTube, her perspective of like, why anime specifically. And she's like, I kind of turned my perspective from wanting to be Casey Neistat or these other YouTubers she mentions and be more like Gigguk and Akidiris and bringing her influences and stuff. And I really like hearing about that. I also love, of course, the opportunity this has to shout out other female creators in the space, which, yeah, there really aren't that many. And they don't have the biggest followings. I mean, you have Emichiru and Akidiris, and then sometimes you have some people that pop off like Neuralities or Colleen. But then it's like you want more of that for sure, because there's plenty of women and non-binary people that are watching it, and not to conflate non-binary and female people together or anything, but it's sort of like it is very male dominated. I totally get that. You're listening to one right now. But and I just really liked the opportunity, and I did subscribe to the people that I wasn't subscribed to initially, that I hadn't heard of before. So mad respect. I really appreciated that. And yeah, I think that's, I like that this ended up not being as talk down to the haters or something, because it's sort of just like, I think she gets that it's like, yeah, this is kind of what happens when a tweet blows up and gets 600 quote retweets, and what happens, right? And I think that inakyu kind of alludes to this, is that there's a lot of the same comments. It's never like when a video gets big, when you get something that's trending or whatever, a lot of people have a lot of people think the same. And so with the kind of the tedious thing about getting such a big hit is that like you get a lot of attention, but a lot of the same feedback, a lot of the same comments, and it's just like you can't respond to all of them in a unilateral way, because then the next person will come along that has the same. They'll just have to. It's like changing. It's like having somebody having amnesia, and you explain to them your rationale. It's like, look, I can enjoy shonen as a woman, and then you have to explain it again, and it's just like, ugh, forget it, right? I don't know, but yeah, I just liked this opportunity. I also really liked just kind of the format of this being. It was really shot really well, and like has different settings and places, like segments and stuff. It just felt like it had variety to it, visually and subject wise, I guess, which I really enjoyed as well. Yeah, I really liked this video a lot. I'm happy you made a point about it and tackling it head on. I'm mad respect, and yeah, it's awesome. Lines and motions. I didn't like Berserk, and that's fine. And I did warn them. And then they do make point of it that like, isn't that weird? Isn't that weird that there's pushback when I even just make this point about this very lauded series and everything. And I guess what the reason I was coming from was just that like you're gonna have to kind of like really stack that up, and I think it's hard to do with such a not just a critically lauded series, but also very popular and has been really looked through. If it was an obscure series that not as many people have talked about and is kind of an underrated thing, the insight that you bring to that title is fresh, right? But then it's very easy for a series, if you even remotely start a criticism of Berserk, there's like a 90% chance that it is something that has been addressed and has been decided on, and isn't necessarily new. And so it's very easy to just kind of like attack that because with the same arsenal, because it's a very decided series, decidedly lauded, right? And I do like ultimately the sentiment here, and obviously the video is gorgeous. Like, come on, it's like God. Now I'm obviously thinking about this as someone who made a similar Berserk video in terms of like manga moving and stuff like that. Although I didn't have any After Effects, I didn't have that at all. So just it's a lot more rudimentary, you know. And obviously also has a lot more anime footage integrated in it as well. Whereas lines, it's all the thing. And before I forget this, I don't want to forget this. I don't know if it was in the last video or not. I love the new intro and outro. I think the outro you have where it reminded me of Pop Culture Detective, where your whole video is voiceover and narration and everything. And at the end of the video, there's like the box, and you're talking to the camera of like, hope you like the video, and here's this other thing going on, and my thoughts about this and everything like that as the patrons are going. Love that format. And I didn't, because I've seen that with at least Pop Culture Detective was doing that, and maybe probably other creators have probably done that, but like it's so smart, and it's so, I just like seeing it. I don't know, it's just a great choice. I just wanted to mention that. Like, awesome, I like that. But what was it? But like to me, it was that I think I mentioned it with MercuryFalcon, this title tension. This when you're watching a YouTube video, unless it's in full screen, the title is right there. The viewer subconsciously can be constantly looking at the title and being like, okay, what's he? Because I think when you click on this video, if I didn't like Berserk, and that's fine, they want to know why you didn't like it. But you're making obviously your point you're making is that, you know, I didn't dislike it. There's just this indifference towards it. There's this sort of, I don't really have anything to say about it. And it's not a favorite. And it's right. And I think that's fair for your platform, where people are kind of wanting you to see you talk about it, right? And that's sort of I felt like it was a similar problem I had with my Loop On video, trying to discuss mid. And how do you show mid in a video? How do you choose to do that? How do you word it, right? And like coming across how it's like it's not bad, it's fine, you know, right? And I think like for me, the reason in discourse, especially on YouTube, and I think you make the point of this when you're showing various titles, like some like hostile bigotry, there's definitely cloud of bigotry in this. Oh, absolutely. But I think the reason that YouTube, at least in terms of YouTube, but you can say this is the same as media discourse everywhere. The reason it's not the best thing ever or the worst thing ever, and there's not so much in between, is because the stuff in between is not as interesting, unfortunately. It's hard to describe, for one. Like I just said, I feel like I didn't get in this video from you why you were indifferent, because how do you even start that? You don't have any feelings about it. What is there? There isn't. And so and so I think you are talking about the broader context of like, can't we just say it was fine, right? And yeah, I think you're fair. You're right. But it just kind of leaves something to be desired, and it's kind of why you don't see it in YouTube, because I think it is hard to talk about, at least from my experience. And then it's just not what audiences might be looking for. You know, when they want to say something's the best thing, they want people to, either way, you know, and this is a general problem, it's kind of separate, but like, people want to validate their opinion. And that there can be some validation from being in the middle, because there are plenty of people in the middle for this, for sure. But like, the arguments on one side or another are just more flashy, and it's just sort of the thing that is attention grabbing, and it's kind of one of the things that sours our community discourse. And I'm happy that you're pushing back against it. I guess it's just sort of like, yeah, the address, not the, I don't know, the awareness of that, of like why that would be the case. It's because it gets the attention, and people's, at least a lot of people on YouTube, at least, the views and the revenue is the thing that's sustaining them to continue doing this. And so they kind of have to make those points sometimes, or not even sometimes, that just make it their whole thing, their whole identity of, and then that, the media influences the people, the consumer. When the Red Letter Media guys or Nostalgia Critic, when our general audio, when our videos that they're being made are that binary and polarized, the audience becomes polarized, and that informs that. I guess that makes, I don't know if I'm rambling, or I'm probably repeating myself a lot. I apologize. Yeah, but I guess it was that sort of, I don't know if, hopefully that was what I wanted to say. I think that was the vibe, where it's like, because you didn't really make any declarative comments on Berserk at all, the only real constructive thing that you mentioned about it is the fact that the manga itself doesn't necessarily have the labeling, the proper, like, kind of let people know. And there's an example you bring up of Witch Hat Altaria, where it's like, hey, this chapter, it's got this in it, and you can skip it. It is possible to skip, and you're not gonna miss it, and there's a sensitivity to that. There's an acknowledgement and a courtesy for the readers, and people who, there are some people that like are kind of weird, and like they get bothered by disclaimers. Whatever, man, like, hit skip, like, whatever, dude. Like, it's just for the people who need it, the people that I think it's important to have. It's just being accommodating. It's being like, it's just being accommodating. It's being courteous, basically. I don't know. It's just weird that people are weird about that. But I think that point that you make is constructive. And I know that you're talking about the constructive versus deconstructive. I think that was the word, or unconstructive. The different kinds of criticism, for sure. But it's sort of like, it reminded me of me not being able to really talk about Cowboy Bebop. I had written a script where I'm like, I have nothing to say about it, because it's like, what do you say? Not to mention with, what's been said, but, or even just that, like, yeah, that's a thing. Oh, another thing that this reminded me of, it's this, I get it as a Berserk, I don't really necessarily, I certainly leapt to the wait kind of thing response when you posted your thumbnail. So I do feel that way about Berserk, for sure, as a favorite. But it reminded me, this feeling you had where it's like, yeah, I read it and it's fine. I don't have anything negative to say about it, but it didn't seem to emotionally grip you the same way. And then you were like, yeah, I'll stop at Golden Age. Okay. And low key, it's sort of like, I was a little frustrated that you said that you stopped reading at Golden Age, and then you're using a lot of scenes from the rest of Berserk, and actually not that much from Golden Age. From what I remember, a lot of the visuals you use are very iconic. Kind of like, a lot of people use these kinds of images because they're great shots. But the vast bulk of them are from after Golden Age. So I personally found it just a tiny, there was a conflict for me as a video, that obviously that's not that big of a difference, but I don't know, to me that's what I happened to notice that. It's like, well, you're showing how cool Berserk is, but you didn't even get to this part yourself. Anyway, yeah, but like, hell, I get stopping after Golden Age when everyone says it's the best arc, and I think it's the best. I think the rest of the material doesn't really stack up against it. But at the same time, I think that way because I watched the 97 anime, not the manga. I know it's pedantic. I know it's just my opinion. But that reminds me of this idea of, like, people who've read One Piece, or even have watched One Piece. They're like, yeah, it was good. 6 out of 10. It's like, well, 6. It's right, as a as whether One Piece has become like my second favorite anime ever, type of deal. Like I love that thing to bits. I get kind of weirdly defensive, and right, I get this like, what do you mean? And that's okay. That's okay that they feel that way, but it's sort of like, damn it, man. And then, I feel like I'm sure you've had that sentiment in the comments as well. I only skimmed them briefly. Obviously, I think all the top comments were very supportive of this video because, again, I don't think you said anything that was overtly disagreeable about Berserk. And so there really isn't any. I feel like the only people that would have any toxic comments are the people that just didn't watch the video. Which are easy to, they're not easy to ignore. I shouldn't say that, but very, very like simplistic, like straightforward to ignore. Like, you clearly didn't watch it, dude. You clearly just looked at the title and fucking commented, you idiot. Clown on this man. Yeah, but yeah, that was pretty much the extent I wanted to say about it. Where it's like, I can understand that the vibe of the sentiment for sure. But I'm happy that it, I think the video turned out pretty good, I should say. Wow, Gigguk actually interviewed someone, the legendary author of Vinland Saga, and I liked the strat that he did here where he posted sort of the main points and kind of a nice edited version with some anime footage on top in a tight 13 minutes on his main channel, and then his completely full unedited version that had the kind of the pauses, the author thinking about stuff, referencing a lot of different influences. Like, I noticed the main channel, I think, cut out almost pretty much all of the stuff that he mentions, like there's this really good author, or there's this other thing that we've been looking into, or like what were your influences early on and stuff like that. Like, what manga did you read when you were a kid that made you want to do manga and stuff. Like, all those answers were really interesting that weren't in the main video. I am putting in the main video because I think it does generally do a good job of the gist of the interview, and the interview is more longer, like 37 minutes or something, like pretty much like a lot longer. But I'm really respecting and appreciating that he had the ability to upload both, and I like that a lot. I think it's worth subscribing to his main channel and his secondary channel for that, assuming he does this more often. I think he definitely had the opportunity to do this, and I'm also happy that like he finally felt comfortable enough with his Japanese to have this interview. He does still word his questions in English. He has the whole interview, but then he cuts all of himself talking for the most part in the main video, and he kind of has like a more video version of him saying, I wanted to ask him, and then it's just kind of just the author talking. But like, I like that he you see him actually asking the questions, and like he's not asking them in English, but when he's able to, he is kind of trying to respond in Japanese and in as a in ways that he can. But the fact that he was like comfortable enough to conduct this interview with the author speaking in Japanese, it's just very encouraging to see. It's just another growth and step in his creative output. He's not like reinventing himself or doing stuff like that on a constant basis, but I do always like talking about Gigguk when he is doing something that's a little out of his comfort zone or little boundary pushing, because it's just that's inspiring and I think that's hopefully something that I think a lot of us anime YouTubers don't watch a lot of anime YouTube anyway, because once we do it right, it's sort of like anime creators don't really watch that much anime because it's like, well, I kind of and it's just that you don't really want to. I get it. Again, like, the digest is kind of the way I'm able to do this, because I want to, but then I never ever feel the desire to. Very rarely feel the desire to. But then yeah, but then for those of us who would try watching some Gigguk stuff, I hopefully would encourage us to take our own risks and try different new things, I guess, because I certainly haven't. I mean, I like keeping in my comfort zone, and I'm hoping this next video I'm making, or that I'm hoping to make, is like that. But I guess I am sort of challenging myself in one way, because when this video comes out, at least it's very short notice, but April 8th I will be at Anime Boston presenting my very first panel, live hour-long thing. So yeah, and I've practiced it, and you feel pretty good about it. But that is something I'm challenging myself with, for sure. But then yeah, like I just think that that's important for growth, right? So I don't know. I just obviously it's a whole opportunity thing. He's not doing that much heavy lifting because it's just asking questions in an interview, but it still takes like bravery, I think, to like feel like you're worth and like willing and have the saying the right questions and having the right proper etiquette around the person and everything. And I don't know, just generally I think there's something upstanding and brave about it, I guess. That's just my thoughts about it, I guess. But I really liked the interview. I thought it was very valuable and interesting. Oh, last thing I will say is that it does have spoilers. It does have spoilers for at least especially his main video. For some, I think the way he orients it and frames the video, the interview questions and the responses and stuff, he does kind of shuffle things around a bit, which is fair for the flow of the video, makes sense. But the way it definitely spoils it. Definitely. Yeah. Which is unfortunate because I've not really seen Vinland Saga yet. I think I knew about it. I think that was a spoiler I already knew, but still. Okay. You don't have to remind me. Kind of deal. No, but fair. I mean, it makes sense because like the question that Gigguk, he doesn't ask him to spoil it or something. That just kind of happened that way. And it's a good answer. I think it's valuable, and it was worth putting in the video. Just maybe, I don't know if he did put a spoiler warning at the beginning and I just kind of ignored it like I always do. Sorry. I don't know if I did it like I always do, but that would have been nice to have a spoiler warning. I'm just looking inside in the description. Just the couple first seconds of the video. Yeah, I thought so. I don't think he puts any spoiler warnings or anything. Maybe I missed it. But he asks the author what his favorite moment is, if there's any moments that stick out. And that's another thing I really would want to bring up, actually. I really liked how often both the author and Gigguk kind of acknowledge each other. Gigguk's not just the kind of this like faceless interviewer person and the only content is the interview and the valuable information there. I like that he's at least you really don't get this in the main video, but in the unedited version, the way Gigguk frames his questions sometimes, like that question where it's like, what was some favorite moments that stand out to you when drawing Vinland Saga? Because I know as a content creator who also just makes material, who makes content like this manga author, there's moments that stand out to me, right? Within certain videos or videos in general, there's certain moments it's like, this is a highlight this is a favorite video of mine or whatever. And then the author picks up a volume, flips right to the panel and shows them, and it's the spoiler, which totally fair. I think I think it's an important question to have, and it's very interesting, and I'm happy that it's something that's really significant. And I don't know, it's just really insightful, despite being spoilers. So I get it, it's fine. But no, yeah, I really liked that Gigguk actually put himself in the position, and also the author was like, "Oh, do you have kids?" And he's like, "No, I'm 32." And he's like, "Ah, you're still young." There's an actual banter sometimes, and it feels like a little bit more of a conversation than an interview. Obviously, it's mostly an interview, but yeah, I really liked that there was a little more of a back and forth with this one. I don't know if Joey necessarily did that with his interviews, if I can remember. But that's okay. I mean, I still liked his interviews a lot. But yeah, obviously, of course, I'm going to talk about when Gigguk interviews somebody. If I'm going to talk about when Joey interviews someone, yeah, of course. Yeah, love this video a lot. I'm really happy that happened. Hopefully, the opportunity presents itself for more opportunities. Jackisboy is Jackisboy. I did not even plan that. I didn't even think of it. Sorry. Is Pokemon bad now? Great title. Big fan. And this is just his he's talking about this tension that the community is having with, like, are we all just kind of Stockholm syndrome? I think Stockholm syndrome is the word for, like, we all say it's bad now, but we're still buying the games and they're still doing well and everything. Are we enabling Pokemon to be this way and they don't have to challenge themselves or improve, even though they did? they took themselves they did take a significant challenge on with Arceus being a very different Pokemon game, and then starts, making that transition as a transition point to Scarlet Violet. I think was mostly a success. I think I don't get that vibe because he talks about the unholy trinity of Pokemon games with like X, Y, Sun, Moon, and Sword Shield being the main three that a lot of the at least he put out a form, and I filled it out as well, talking about your kind of relationship with Pokemon and where you think you may have fell off and stuff. And there's those three main eras a lot of people for different reasons kind of cite, and not as many people talk how bad about the negatives of Gen 5 because, surprise, it's a good gen. People didn't think so at the time when it initially came out, and that's unfortunately one reason why they may have moved away from pixel art. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much. No. But I liked that he not only just acknowledges that, but he kind of goes through each stage and his reaction to those games. He's like, I actually really like Sun Moon for this and this and this reason, and kind of defending it of sorts, and defending XY. And then Sword Shield was like, yeah, that's the camp I'm in, where I'm like, yeah, certain this and that and everything. But I like he's not so much dwelling on the particular points about Pokemon. He addresses those. He doesn't completely shove them aside, but he's mostly talking about the personal relationship and our relationship to nostalgia, which I think was actually a really great counter with this other video I'm going to talk about later for that Mother's Basement released of Let Goku Die, where I'm not going to talk about that video later, but like with Jack, I liked that it's a kind of a different take for a lot of people, because he's like, a lot of people have kind of seen now nostalgia as a bad thing and as a negative thing, but then he cites all these studies. He actually does research and looks into like the research and study about nostalgia, and it's overwhelmingly positive effects of nostalgia. Obviously, anything in everything needs to be in moderation, and if there is something that you have a regressive experience with, or there's something toxic about, there's something that you personally need to sort out and everything. And then I like that his observation of like, is the company evil for releasing these games in winter months, because statistically winter months are when you want something familiar and a throwback, or you're missing something, or you want that like nostalgic warmth sort of this because it's winter and stuff. And are they evil for doing that? Like, you could say that, but it's more of a smart business decision, because obviously they have people that they need to pay, and they want the game to be a success. It's like putting a YouTube video out at a certain time of day or a certain day of the week. You have your strategies, or you have your certain reasons for stuff, and and they're not evil for that. That's just being thoughtful. And I like that there was a distinction between nostalgia and, I forget his term for it, but like regressive nostalgia or something. But yeah, just like within reason, like certain things about it, I guess. Yeah, it was just a lot more thoughtful and ruminating kind of video from him, rather than a lot of jokes. There's really not too many of his one-liners and weird tangents and erratic behavior almost. I don't know if that's how you describe it, but I guess he just feels he's a little more mellowed out or something. And I don't know, I just really like that, because it's something that this is such a knee-jerk kind of topic, a reactive kind of topic, and I think he treats it with a refreshing amount of nuance, and I just really liked it. I also like the format of this too, where he's using his face cam format, which I think I'm not a big Milk watcher recently, but from what little I have seen of Milk stuff, like they're adopting a lot of the instead of using copyrighted material for the videos, they're using their face cams and reacting to stuff, and it ends up having this more visceral kind of reaction, right? It's sort of like the difference between with video game gameplay videos, right, with Game Grumps not showing their face, versus something like, I don't know, Funhouse. Not that my roommates are into Funhouse, and we watched it the other night, so just on my mind. But just you're seeing the players' reactions to those things is a totally unique, different, its own experience. And obviously this links to my other things. I've like my long-standing kind of it's something I never realized with anime YouTube videos until recently, where it's like, oh yeah, if you show your face, the audience has more of a visceral connection to what you're saying and can pay attention to it more and everything. And so yeah, but it's also kind of an economic choice on Jack's part, because he doesn't have to, like, what do you show here? What do you physically show for this study on nostalgia or whatever? You know, like some stock images, and like, you know, Jack's good at that sort of visual, like, what do you show there? Because he's done that for so long. But I feel like this is, I don't know if it's the first video, but it feels like this is a very distinct one where it's mostly his face, almost entirely. And obviously he showed his face in previous videos, and I liked that. He was actually one of the few YouTubers I knew of from that time, from like 2017 through 19 or whatever, that would actually show his face but also have that reaction meme kind of voiceover anime kind of content. That mix was always really distinctive, I guess. But yeah, I just really liked that economic choice, but it was just really effective. It had some personal touches to it, funny in places when it needed to be, but it's not like overwhelming. It not like I don't feel like his videos has ever been overwhelming for me in a bad way. It obviously, there's a stimulating factor for a lot of his like his rapid fire stuff, but yeah, I liked his I liked the video a good deal. Okay, CrunchyBagels with a banger, algorithm thought it was a banger. I thought it was all right. Onimai, more than fan service. Now look, I actually ran out of space, I guess. Fuck. Onimai, more than fan service. I've seen this video twice now because, well, two reasons. One, I watched it when it came out, like close to when it came out, and then today for digest. So there's a length of time I wanted to like. But the reason I watched it initially, and another kind of thing, is the fact that like I've since watched the whole show after, like, I watched the video, and then a couple weeks later, it's only been 2 weeks, but like sometime later, I just recently watched the whole show, because I am, well, I just don't want to, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but that is the next thing I want to make, is this video about Onimai. So it's a similar situation I've been in with Lupin, where Corinth put out a Lupin video that blew up. It did really, really well view-wise. And so I have this like pressure of like being compared, and because it was a similar, like, let's watch all the Lupin movies, and I'm also doing a video about watching all of Lupin. So it was there was that sort of intimidation of like comparing the two and everything. So the idea, this with more than fan service type of video, where it's sort of defending Onimai. And I know another person has also put out a similar video where everyone's wrong about it or whatever, and I've not watched that one. But I'm also making a similar video about its reception, where it's a little interesting thing going on right now. But it's different. It's kind of a different, But anyway, I've seen this video almost kind of a rival to me or the thing that I'm making, whatever. So I'm coming in it from that. So if I'm a little overly harsh or biased or whatever, that's why. I just wanted to be, I like being transparent about those sorts of things. I don't want to come off as some weird ulterior motive or something, even though it is. And I just want to be transparent about the ulterior motive, I guess. I don't know. No, but so yeah. So I watched it twice, and I've since seen the whole show after watching it a second time. And yeah, overall I like it. I think you're making perfectly fair points. But I did take notes. And not too many. Yeah, I guess the two biggest points of contention for me about this video, I'm sorry if the most of this might be like criticism, but look, that's why. Okay. But like the two big things for me that was just like, man, but also sort of like, okay, I could kind of fill in this gap of sorts. This is sort of an in for me. So for one thing, you made this video before the series finished. So the most recent episode into writing this was episode 10, and it was probably episode 11 by the time you released the video, maybe. But either way, the show was not done by the time you put this video out. Now, thankfully, it doesn't exactly contradict anything that you mention. Not to my knowledge, at least. And even the piss, the piss thing that you mentioned towards the beginning of like, it's 3 times of how many situations that Mahiru finds himself pissing himself. I don't think there was a 4th one. It doesn't matter. but yeah, like to me, I'm always like, just wait a little longer. And I get striking the iron while it's hot, especially with seasonal anime. They don't usually do well once the show's done for whatever reason. But I guess to me it was, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. Or maybe it was part of your schedule of like, oh, in this couple I was going to talk about this sort of thing. Sure. But it's just always a nagging thing for me. Or just like, what would have happened if you talk about this sort of thing where it's like, oh, fans think it's going to go this way, and then it does. And it's something in the episode contradicts what you say in the video. I always am personally a fear of that. I don't think it ended up happening for the most part. But that's always something I'm just like, come on. Because to me, I feel like it would sort of like undercut your argument a little bit. But that's just, it ended up not being that big of a deal. It's just something I wanted to point out. The other big thing that happens really towards the beginning of the video and is sort of the thing that's like, well, okay, and this video is kind of toothless to me a little bit. Where you say it's more than fan service and stuff, and you're really defending the whole show, you very quickly say, I haven't read the manga, so I can't speak to its quality. And I don't know what circles you're in, but like, to me, the people who have read the source material are the ones that are making this argument and that have the loudest complaints about the show, that like it punched the fan service up to 11. They know it's all like more than fan service and all the things that you're talking about, all the value and quality that this show does have, but their issue is in the OP or in the early episodes where the scene is in the manga, but it's way more sexualized for this and that reason. And you really put all of that in a box and put it over here. And I don't think anything you say in here is that disagreeable because people know that already. But you're not addressing the issue, I think, is what I would say. Because you didn't even try looking at the manga. If you say you're researching this video and you're looking at the wiki for this video, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, okay, but you have the time to do that. Can't you read a little bit of the manga? Just a smidge, a chapter or two? And look, I also shouldn't be saying, I know you don't have to read the source material for every video you make. Obviously not. I think it's only necessary when it pertains to, when it's something that like, when it's part of the conversation. And in this case, I think it's a really important part of the conversation to make a point of. Because, I mean, when I'm talking about Naruto, for example, I know a lot of people are manga-only readers. So I'm going to be talking about it from my experience through the anime, but if I'm going to look at the manga as well, in case there's some discrepancy, so that I can actually kind of let the viewer know that I'm acknowledging it, and I'm not putting it in a box away on the side and ignoring it all, practically. And I know, I don't think you ignore the fan service completely. You do bring it up a good number of times, but I don't know if you're necessarily making any argument to justify it in one way or another, which I kind of think is the more interesting. It's the more interesting quandary, I think you do make a good argument of why there's age regression in the show. I think that's a fair enough point. But I don't know. It was just a long video that like a lot of it is like a third of it was just kind of talking about different characters and kind of summarizing it almost, at least to me. And so even from someone who didn't watch the show, I've watched like 2 episodes by the time I watched this video, and then subsequently I binged the whole thing and then rewatched this video. I feel like I didn't gain any or lose anything either way. And I don't know if videos necessarily have to have something additive in that way, but like, I don't know, just something that stood out to me where it's like, wow, I really didn't get anything additional or negative from watching the show or not. I don't know where that stands. I don't know how that makes me feel. you know. I would have liked. I feel like if for videos, if I don't know the show, I'm learning something. But if I do know the show, then it'd be ideal if I still take something out of it, even if I have seen it. So I mean, just something to for me. I feel like just something to me at least. And again, I am so sorry I'm being harsh and not like complimenting it as much. The one thing I will say, the one thing, it's a couple things. I did like a lot of the visual inventiveness of this show. I'm sorry if that was loud, by the way. The fucking mic. I was like especially close and did one of my no, never mind. But like I like the a lot of the visual inventiveness you have in this video, with the visual devices, with the boxes and the characters and some cutaways and stuff, and using the backgrounds in a particular way. I also like the editing trick of sorts of having a sketch of Mahiro for just the points where it seems like, yeah, you don't really quite know what to put here for visuals, so you're just gonna put that in. And that's kind of what it was to me as somebody who really struggles with that. Specifically with my Naruto videos, one of the biggest roadblocks for me and kind of the biggest pulling teeth thing that kind of was why it was taking me so long to make these videos was that, like, what the fuck do I put here? Because I'm talking so abstractly and generally. And it's sort of finding what to put in that video. And I think the visual inventiveness is interesting that you do here. I think it's cool that it's not all just anime footage. So that's something I feel like I've admired about your videos in the past, but I especially like here. For sure. But yeah, there really wasn't any addressing of the OP and ED, and I get the OP and ED are not the biggest and most important aspects of the show, but like I feel like they were the reason. It's the first impression. It's the very first, and it was the deciding factor of people. I probably not. Yeah, I'm good. I'll pass. Right? And depriving themselves of a really wholesome, fun experience. I think it's a great show, and I think everybody who's finished the show can agree that like that was good, that was really fun, and that was like really wholesome, or whatever they take away from it, right? But there's this turnoff, and like, why is it there? I don't know. That's what I'm hopefully gonna try to talk about. But anyway, sorry to spill the beans. I knew I was gonna hold off on telling people what I was working on, and never mind, I'm an idiot. But of course, because I'm talking about this video, I feel like it was important for me to read the context. Anyway, but there's another. I liked your discussion of Studio Bind with the camera talk, where you're talking like the different inventiveness of the shot composition, storyboarding, and the general camera of where it's placing and stuff. But it was interesting to me that you didn't bring up that they don't really leer the camera. It's not angling down that often. I think you said that. Maybe you did, and I don't know. I just didn't register. It's like, oh, he does. I don't know. But it was something to me. I feel like there was missing this like the fact that how its approach to fan service works, because it's shooting in an interesting way. It's not just in a fan servicey ogling kind of way, in a way that's like not boring, that actually elicits a reaction from the audience, whether that's suspense or uncomfortableness or wholesomeness, like whatever feeling it wants. It gives you, it elicits an emotion and an emotional reaction. Where it's like the lack of panty shots in this show. You'd say that like, oh, it's a bunch of fans, or oh, it's tons of fans. Not really. I think of those of us who watched it, like, everyone says like, oh, in the latter episodes, but I would say even in the early ones, where there are these like certain scenes and stuff that are very showstoppy or whatever, but like they're not really showing certain panty shots that often. But the ones that they do, why? Where's that particular, you know? Is there a particular reason? And if there isn't a reason, all right, we'll think of one. Because everything in it, I don't want to make argument for my video. Shut up. Sorry. And I will also agree with you. I will be on your side with this, the argument about Studio Bind. Despite that there's no third title of theirs that they've made so far to make this a pattern with them, that you observe that they seem to be making these shows that are neat rehabilitation shows that are a little pervy but are very well produced. like, yeah, and Mushoku Tensei and Onimai both have this like very contentious, but like everyone who's watched their shows really like them. But then the people that don't completely disengage and kind of close their ears and completely ignore them, right? Despite the quality. They're just very divisive. And I get that three's a pattern, but I would counter that argument about like, oh, it's not a pattern yet. Wait a sec. Well, look, Studio Bind in particular was formed, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, it was literally formed for the creation of Mushoku Tensei. We didn't really expect them to make another anime series at any point, like while they were making Mushoku Tensei. That was just the thing they were making. And so for I think their second work as a studio is very informative. It's kind of similar. It reminds me of Walt Disney Animation, where their first movie is Snow White, and it's a big deal because it's the first feature-length animated movie, first one, at least I know of. I don't think anyone's ever counted that. I feel like I would have heard it that otherwise by then. But anyway, big deal for that. What's their second movie? Pinocchio. And Pinocchio, like, I think in the grand canon, it's sort of just like, whatever, you know? But, like, I think there's something really thematically interesting about Pinocchio being about this story about an inanimate piece of art being animated and being breathed life into it and moving on its own. It's sort of a commentary on the illusion of animation itself, of this art that they're just drawings, but it's shot in a way that it has the illusion of movement. It's kind of a similar sort of thing. And then not only that, it was just like the fact that it has so much water to it is like that's something they were experimenting with and really trying to like push the boundaries of. It is informative of what a studio's second work is. And I think it's especially important for Studio Bind, where it's like that was their ethos, and now they're choosing this show, and it happens to align very similarly thematically. So it really, I think, even people are like, hey, let's not get carried away. Sure, I agree, let's not get carried away. But that doesn't mean to completely disengage with the argument that, like, weird similarities that these two shows happen to have, I think that's perfectly valid. So I agree with you with that, in that point you make at the end. Although I'll disagree with you about one point, about the Momiji Mahiro shipping. I saw it. I'm not disagreeing with the shipping necessarily, or that they're just really good friends. Like, okay, dude. Yeah, that's what they all say, right? Yeah, there's certainly something there, but you misinformed a little bit. I think you interpreted a certain scene a little too, you jumped the gun a little bit. There's a moment where you're describing your argument of why they're shipping. It's the scene where Momiji has the big trench coat and Mahiro's like, no, absolutely not. He's like flustered about it. And you say the reason for this being that Momiji would look too jaw-droppingly attractive in it for Mahiru to handle. No, not exactly. You say it in the you're describing the scene, and you mention this moment where Mahiru is worried about looking like Momiji's the boyfriend and she's the girlfriend, because that was the thing that Mahiru was worried about when he first met Momiji. Because he meets Momiji and they go to the supermarket and he sees somebody like, oh, they're like a little couple, because Momiji gets mistaken as a boy all the time. That's like a distinctive quality about Momiji, and something that kind of is a cool contrast with her sister, who is a Gyaru, very feminine character, and expresses femininity more than any other character in the show. And yet her sister has this kind of opposite thing where it's like, I'm mistaken for a boy all the time. I wear this, it's not a yukata, it's like the boy version of a yukata during like the New Year's thing. And they're like, why are you wearing that? It's like, I just like it, you know? And so there's sort of an interesting, and then of course there's that fun contrast where, Mahiru is, in a girl's body, having this relationship with someone who is a girl mistaken as a boy. I think this is cool, icon. And so the reason he says no to the trench coat isn't because she would look attractive in it, because if that was the case, wouldn't the anime show us a scene of her wearing the trench coat? I could be mistaken of like, I could actually completely forget that they do show that. I have to look again. I don't, but I'm pretty sure they don't do that, and they just kind of show her wearing that because the intention, the assumption is that Mario was worried that she will look like a guy, and that will make them look like a couple, which is what he doesn't want because of the whole like boy, because of just he just doesn't want the attention. He just doesn't want the attention of being this, of how he doesn't want people talking about them the way that happened in the supermarket back in episode 4 or something. That was why. It's not because she would look jaw-droppingly attractive. Did he say that? Did he say that? I don't know. Just a point. But I'm not disagreeing with the ship at all. I'm just, look, let's be accurate about what we're talking about here. At least I think that's a more favorable interpretation of the scene than this kind of logic leap of like, oh, she would look too attractive. I don't necessarily think that's it. Anyway. Yeah. I think that's all the points I wanted to make about it. I'm sorry for being like super critical or whatever. I'm hoping I'm fair, I guess. But yeah, I'm just hoping I can make something that I'm not acknowledging the video itself, but just something that I like. It'll be informed. Where I'm like, I do not want to make the same points that you make, even though there are ones that I would have made and would agree with and probably would have put in my own interpretation, like the bind argument, like the studio bind thing. But the fact that you mentioned that, I'm going to try to avoid. I don't want to retread any ground that you've already successfully done, especially for how this video popped off. So it's sort of like, yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. A lot of thoughts, quite many thoughts, but yeah. Another video from Mother's Basement, which has the title tension I keep harping on. When he says "let Goku die," it makes it seem like the video is an argument for, oh, the series should have ended at Cell Saga, or or at least the Gohan should have been the protagonist. And yeah, he does make that argument, but he's not really making that argument. His focus is more on this concept of eternal media, the constant rebooting and infinite, never-ending type of slop. Because like, well, the slop, it becomes slop. Any story that runs for that long will become slop if it doesn't have a progression and a reason for being that long. Which, he makes those counter arguments with One Piece where it's like, no, it's actually building to something. And in fact, that might be something that people are scared of when the reason they don't want to watch One Piece is because they're worried of investing in something for so long only for it to end. I guess. I think it's because it's too long. But then he's like, oh, but people are willing to watch Naruto and stuff. Like, no. I think Naruto is also kind of a long commitment for people, especially, and it also has different points of tension because it has a lot more filler, a lot more original episodes and stuff. It's still 70 volumes. It's long, don't get me wrong, but it's still not as long as One Piece or what. I don't know. But there was a weird point to make, and also that like he's trying to like kind of lump Naruto with the whole Boruto thing, where I think he just has a thing against Naruto. I remember he like talked about his complaint about like the outfits in anime where like Naruto characters are all wearing the exact same thing for so long, and at least Bleach wears something different, except no they don't. No they fucking don't. They're wearing their fucking robes for most of the show itself and not the promotional OP shit. I don't know. I feel like he has something against Naruto. just a hunch. But like the fact that Naruto does have an ending, and you actually don't have to watch Boruto. Whereas for me, I stopped Dragon Ball at Dragon Ball. I knew once I picked up Z, I would have to go all the way through to Buu Saga. And okay, here's the point I was really worried I would forget when I was watching, and then I do remember it. He's talking about GT and how when they finish Z and Akira Toriyama says he has enough money, he just makes this assumption. He just kind of comes up with this where it's like he's gotten plenty of money, and so he's just gonna stop writing the manga or whatever. But Toei and Shueisha want to keep making money, so they're gonna make GT. Like they're fucking greedy, rich, whatever, and That's a very cynical way of looking at it. It's just so like insufferably cynical way of looking at it, actually. I hate the argument, actually, because look, this is people's job, and it has a time slot, and it's not like, you know, yeah, Dragon Ball is really popular and made some certain people rich, sure, but it also made people their livelihood for that period of time, and then that thing is ending. So you need to make the next show that airs in this time slot. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna find another series, or are you going to continue the series you're doing in this original capacity where they had this idea, they want to explore different? I don't know what the impetus of GT was, and I'm sure there are interviews talking about that, and like, but like, this is a lot. It's not just like, just because you made a lot of money, you suddenly have all that money and you just want to make more money. My contention with this argument is that like, this is people's livelihoods where like they need to continue making money because they've already spent that money living, paying the rent, paying for food. Just because it made them all this money, they need to continue sustaining the business by paying all these people and running the company and paying for, like, yeah, it's great that it was successful and it made them rich, sure, but like, wealth isn't a fixed thing. Like, yeah, Ava made $1 billion, it grossed $1 billion, and then all those people that got paid off of that thing or whatever, some of them were maintained rich or whatever, some of them spent that on other projects, or like, I don't know, what do you expect them to do? And sure, I think that the approach of like not letting Goku die or whatever, sure, but then that is up to the individuals who that were like, and I think he makes this other argument of like, it remained dormant until Dragon Ball Evolution made them be like, oh, we should make more Dragon Ball. Did they say that? Is there an interview somewhere, Jeff? Did you get that from someone? Where are you getting that from? Especially because like, he completely ignores that like, they made Dragon Ball Kai in the 2000s. Like, they were sustaining it not in any original capacity, but like, I don't know, you kind of, and this is just Dragon Ball, right? And there's other cases like this. You can't just make these blanket assumptions and guesses and stuff. At the same time, I do like the sentiment here, where I agree, stories should be allowed to end and new ones to take their place. And it's unfortunate that, you know, our culture and everything. I like that he didn't get too wrapped up in the sequels, reboots, death spiral that a lot of people are having. I know Emblem made a kind of similar video where he completely lost faith, and it seemed to lose faith in movies as a medium once fucking Rise of Skywalker came out, or so. It just felt like, oh, it's never the same. Whatever. And this nihilism towards media. And then Jeff's also talking about like the finiteness and entropy, and the fact that these things do have to end by definition and stuff because it's a runtime or it's a book, and that, you know, there's an end to everything. And yeah, it's, you know, and I think that's why a lot of audiences kind of don't take it that seriously. I feel like Jeff was kind of overthinking this a little bit sometimes. I didn't end up taking notes on it really, but like, it just got the vibe of like, I don't really think that many people think that deeply about it, especially because they realize that these things are finite, that you can rewatch, and you can or pause and like look at certain scenes and stuff. It's media. And I know Jeff, I don't want to be like pedant, like I don't know. I just think Jeff was sort of overthinking this one a little bit, and I do appreciate the sentiment, and I think it's a kind of a snazzy way to advertise this kind of concept of almost anti-nostalgia, again, kind of as a counter for what Jack was talking about with his Pokemon video. I think the two are kind of interesting companion pieces in a way, even though they aired 2 weeks from each other. they're not really coinciding in some way. They came out the same month, but yeah. I don't know. I also liked his observations about Neverending Story, where it's the contrast of like what the book was trying to say, like the actual message of it was very diametrically opposed to what the movie ended up doing. But then I was thinking about it, and it's like, this is art. This is like stuff that people put time and craft into, and then subsequently people enjoyed, including Jeff. Jeff had a lot of fond memories with it, and then he's like, yeah, I think of it in a negative light now that I know the author's perspective on it. I'm sure that's the case for other people, and they're free to think that. But like, and I also don't want to like assume or speak on for the artists who made this movie, but like, there's got to be people who worked on this movie that had a really good time, or refined their skills, or learned something, or found relationships with people. Art is a process that it's a human thing, you know. When we're making stuff, or even like working the day-to-day job, these things get, you know, it's a part of life, and human beings are making these things, and I like that it's. And I think Jeff makes that mention. That's like, it's the one thing that separates us as a species from everything else, is the fact is this fiction, is art, you know, it's telling the stories and stuff. But it's like, these are productions, and they're livelihoods, and people make this, like, people who made the Never-Ending Story. Yeah, again, I don't want to assume, but like, I'm sure a lot of positive stuff came out of that, and there's probably reasons they made sequels, not just because they made money. You know, there's certain, and there's other things that, like, you know, what Bob was talking about with Panda Go Panda, right? Like, they kind of turned lemons into lemonade, where Miyazaki was rejected for making the Pippi Longstocking anime he wanted, and they made something out of it. Or it's kind of a response to that sort of thing. Every art is different, is a different circumstance, and not everything is this cynical, oh, they made sequels, oh, like, yeah, so what? I don't know. It's sort of like, you kind of have to think of it, I don't know, more pragmatic, or I'm just tired of the discourse of it, I guess. It's sort of like, yeah, that's the thing that you decided to make. You can like it or not. You can cast judgment on it in whatever way. But I mean, there's, I don't know, more to think about than that. Just to me personally, again, I like the sentiment of like rejecting this AI thing of show about nothing. I don't know the exact name of it. It was the Twitch stream about like the AI generated Simpsons stuff, Seinfeld. But you know, I don't know. They could be. There's this thing. I think the argument that like Mother's Basement's making is the same kind of argument as like, oh, the Simpsons should stop making episodes. Why? Why should they? No, but not like oh, they make money. Like, no, they do make money. That sustains their livelihood, not being rich. I don't know how rich the people who are working on Simpsons are. Probably pretty successful, sure. It's probably high profile and very, you know, sure. Well, a lot of that wealth and everything, but like, it's a job. It's their job. They go to work in the morning, they clock in, and they write the episode, they clock out. That's their job. So that's okay. And they can enjoy, and their job is to entertain people. And as long as they're doing that, and it's monetarily sustainable for the network and the people who are giving them the money to achieve that entertainment and stuff, then they'll keep doing it. You know, and that's okay. And there's certain stories that have that intention, but like, it's okay if Simpsons if it keeps going for season after season. I think it's fine. I'm not watching it. Because that's why it doesn't affect me. That's why I'm okay with it. I think maybe, is there a possibility, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but is there a possibility that the people who are upset that Simpsons is still going is because they invested so much time in watching every episode that they like, oh, more episodes. And they're not as funny as the original. Like, that was the thing Jack was talking about. Damn it, my fucking phone, I think, is running out of storage. I have to figure this out after the second thing. Yeah, I feel like the comparative nostalgia, when comparing the two things, so like, oh, it isn't as good as it used to be. That's the toxic thing. That's the thing that Jack was talking about. Anyway, yeah, see the two linking together. I like that. The video was fine. I just think food for thought to talk about. Yeah. I want to talk about STEVEM's vid of the Hideaki Anno Problem 2. About Shin Ultraman, and the thing that like there's kind of two problems. I like that he actually addresses in this video about the commentary on, again, the title tension, right, where people he called it the Hideaki Anno problem, but then people are like, so what's the problem exactly? And he kind of, you know, articulates it here, like the problem in that video is supposed to be about the creative burnout and the the process of making art and stuff, the kind of the struggle of it. And this one is actually a different problem, which is the auteur problem, which is the kind of the modern day mythos of Anno that like he has, and it's all branding. The whole auteur thing and being, and really glorifying Anno as this like auteur creator, especially in Shin Kamen Rider recently, like the fact that it's advertising with his photo of his young self wearing the writer costume as the poster of the movie, right? It sort of reminds me also of RRR, the director of that, Rajamouli, SS Rajamouli, I think. Totally butchered that, probably. Like, he shows up in the end credits of the movie. So like the way that the movie ends, and then there's the credits, and they have like this musical sequence, and it's the actors all kind of singing and dancing, and then he joins in with them singing and dancing. It's like he's a part of the viewing experience, and like it's something that that core demographic, the people who really love his movies, are excited to see, because they know him and they know he's a key attribute to these movies. It would be like if Anno kind of has his own physical in-person cameo in one of these movies, and I don't think they've ever gone that far indulgent, but it's true. He's done a lot. He dabbles in a lot of different things, but he's ultimately kind of the media supervisor, and so it's like it's my thing, right? And he's the kind of the front-facing person, even though he's not the director of Shin Ultraman, and that's his longtime collaborator Shinji Higuchi. It's the whole thing with Shin Godzilla too, where like Anno is credited as directing that movie, but Higuchi's the one that's like on set most of the time. And the thing is that like as any auteur does, Kubrick has a director of photography, doesn't he? Maybe he doesn't. See, like there's certain things with like, and I think Steven mentions like the Toshio Suzuki school of auteurs, where it's like it's a selling point that Miyazaki has a physical hand on all of the shots of the movie. Not that much, but he's not animating everything himself, but he's correcting a lot, and he's very intimately involved in all those stages of production. And this certainly is the case in other places. And it reminded me of my one of the things I'm saying in my Hostada panel for Anime Boston. I make a point that he is credited as Enshutsu on these episodes, but any of these creative choices that I'm talking about here that I will credit to Hostada, it's only for the sake of simplicity, because he's overviewing and supervising these things. So he's at the very least approving of these decisions. But whether he actually made those decisions or not, we have no idea unless they physically say. I was directed to a tweet from the animation director of Hosada's Digimon episode that said that he redrew basically everything for that episode. Crazy. You wouldn't have known that, because there's no way to there's kind of no way to credit that on the actor, unless maybe you put animation director or something, but he's not. It's the animation director telling people that was what happened, even though it is their drawings. It's a whole thing, but like, yeah, Anno's not necessarily the one single person responsible. As any auteur, again, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself and then cutting myself off in places. He has people involved in frequent collaborators. He wouldn't have done it without them. These people that go completely unspoken. And I think he is right that there is a marketing aspect to loudly pronouncing the director's name as a marketing stunt, right? So when you say that this movie is from Robert Eggers, I am interested in that movie now, because I loved his work in The Lighthouse and The Northman. I actually haven't seen The Witch, but it's like I now want to watch The Witch because I know he was involved with it, right? And it's sort of a marketing type of thing that you mentioned that, or Ari Aster, right, for his upcoming movie for Beau is Afraid, is the director of if I'm not mistaken, it's the same guy as Hereditary and Midsummer, right? I think so. Or Christopher Nolan is an auteur in the same way, or Steven Spielberg. They may not have even articulated themselves in that way, but it is a marketing feature, right? It's like, oh, this is a Pixar movie. this movie Elemental is a Pixar movie. Don't you know what Pixar movies are? It's Toy Story. It's the same guys as it, but it's not. It's not the same people as Toy Story. Maybe there's some people that share some staff with the original Toy Story all the way up to Elemental. Maybe. But it's not. Very unlikely. At the very least, it's not a Lasseter project. And of course, we know why it's not a Lasseter project. You know. We know why. God. But Lasseter's a big reason why that movie is the way it is. This, you know, he's kind of the reason that Pixar kind of made it the way that it was. He was a very core driving factor of that. There were other factors too. And I don't think STEVEM is necessarily dismissing Anno as this like shell of a person, you know, is not involved in the project. He certainly is. But like, it's kind of a mistake to say that like these kind of evocative directing choices of the way that they're framing the camera and everything is a Anno thing or Higuchi thing, even though it is an Eva. It's also with the original Ultraman. And then I like that STEVEM brings up this director from a particular point in the series onwards, and he describes his directing style, where he kind of just puts the camera anywhere, and it has these really interesting experimental kind of shots that are what is being and then the same guy who did the original effects in the original Ultraman that like drew it onto the physical film, or not the physical, I don't know the film, but he drew them, like, you know, inventing those attacks and what they look like. They brought that guy back for this installment to maintain that authenticity. Even the build of the suit actor, the physical suit actor, who you don't know his name, you don't know his face, but his physical body is something that's iconic and kind of synonymous with Ultraman, at least the original, right? So then, like, that actually does carry an influence. So they have to cast a suit actor with or at least kind of, you know, model the CG, whatever they're doing, onto that suit actor, right? It's sort of, and it just, that art is a collaborative process. A lot of most movies are, most anime is. And so it's very easy to fall in that trap sort of thing. And because he says, yeah, it's easy. It's easy to say those things. And unfortunately, I think the reason I do it for Hosoda in the case with his TV episodes is largely because it's like, that's the reason I'm talking about them. I'm talking about these isolated episodes in the context of a whole show, that I'm not really talking about the entire show itself. I'm talking about them in this particular lens. I'm talking about their relation to each other. And when you watch an episode that he did of Gigguk no Kitaro, and you see similarities in the directing style or tone or something that's in his Ojimaju Doremi episode or his Himitsu no Ako-chan episode, that's the interesting part that I'm talking about. And that's why that I'm doing it the way that I'm doing. But I that's just my justification for it, I guess. It just made me think about what I'm doing with treating Hosoda as a similar kind of auteur, where he's also, you know, kind of easy to just kind of pin everything on him, where he co-founded his studio, where he makes these movies where he's credited as original creator once every 3 years, and that's just the thing that he does, you know, and things he's known for. It's a very similar position, even though he's got plenty of these like pretty well-known established animators, character designer, who's the script writer that he works with, right, versus other ones. The differences in there that actually make a difference, various things, art director, you know, again, these movies are still a collaborative process. But yeah, I just really like that I think it was a benefit that he was clearer in his thesis in this video of the problem being the auteurism, and that this is like it's his movie, even though he's not even directing it. He's not even credited as director. He has plenty of other credits, even being like kind of the model for a particular, you know, for certain scenes and stuff. He is still involved, but it's sort of like mythicizing him kind of is reductionist. It's not like giving proper credit where it's due, or addressing the proper nuance, because I think it's really cool that these directing choices are something that's kind of influenced from the show. And the original show has this cool directing style to it at a certain point, or just or even just learning about different people, because you just learn more about it and appreciate it. And boiling it all down to one person, yeah, is reductivist if you're looking at the whole thing. But yeah, I just really liked this approach to it. And I liked that he was a lot more on screen this time. I guess probably because I don't know. At least it felt that way. It didn't feel like he was using clips of Shin Ultraman that often, which I actually liked. That he was a lot more on screen and stuff. Not that it's bad when he's not. You know, I don't know. It gave more visual variety to it, I guess. Especially because he mixes his classic being like with the shelving on the side versus being in green screen and walking around and talking about it, versus some animated stuff that he does. It's just, yeah, the visual stuff and the stuff he's packing in this video are fantastic. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot. My throat is killing me. Geno 7, I think, is the first time I'm talking about one of their videos, and I was directed to it via Hazel, I'm pretty sure, talking about this channel, like Ray William Johnson and Epic Rap Battles of History combined. Just to that's his description on his channel. This is the first video I've watched from him, and it's his follow-up to the video that he kind of blew up with 200,000 views. But this is a follow-up video for the best short film I'm guessing you haven't seen. And this is another title tension for me, where he just kind of went into the topic very immediately, but not about the short film. I didn't know what the short film he was talking about, and he doesn't really address it at the beginning. He was like, we'll get to that, but he doesn't give any preface. He just sort of like jumps into this concept of media that bends reality and fiction, reality and fantasy, where it's these stories that like they have these dream sequences, or there's moments where you can't really even tell what is reality and what isn't. And there's sort of this weird blending of the two. A lot of them stemming from this story of Walter Mitty, which did have the Ben Stiller remake, but then there's the original movie as well. And I think that's pretty much where I think he talked about one certain short, but I was so zoned out because I was like, is this the short you're talking about? I was so out of it of like what Geno's talking about that I was sort of like, what? But then it's a parade of different kinds of media like this that are bending this reality fiction type of thing in different ways. Scott Pilgrim, Kari Kano, Fooly Cooley, Bocchi the Rock. But it was sort of just, and it was just a series of these different, they have this connective tissue. It just kind of gives them an excuse to talk about Fooly Cooley for a minute or two. It just felt like, why is this in here? What does this add? Or what's the bridge of this? Because I think maybe the bridge is that like he's trying to talk about how influential Gainax as a studio is for him. It's like, oh, I'm very Gainax pilled or whatever, and that's fine. And I don't think any of the things he's talking about, I don't think he talks about them very poorly, or it's fine. I think the videos were fine. It was just sort of like, I think it's been a long time since I watched those videos from Hazel, but I think Geno's talking about he's taking a similar approach to Hazel, where it's a topic, and then he just kind of like strings a bunch of shows together and just gives his impression on them, and just like as a show, it just felt like kind of a review for several of these to me. And I get the link, I get the connective tissue and the commentary on that thesis of this type of media, but like not only do I have this tension of the title being like, okay, what's the short film? What is he talking about? What is the feature presentation? Which he does have the kind of a fun gag of the DVD menu of now our feature presentation, that kind of thing, of finally getting to it. Like, I don't know, like how long into the video? I have to look, hold on. Yeah, like 16 minutes into the video. So like about a little over halfway through, I'd say, yeah, if it's a 30-minute video, a little over halfway through, pretty close to that. I don't know, just having that tension, but then also just like they're just kind of like talking about. I liked it. I don't know. It just didn't do it as for me as much, I guess. I liked ultimately getting to the actual short film, and I do feel like the video itself could have been shorter and just been that section. This idea with like incorporating this theme and bringing different shows, and he can talk about them, but yeah, I don't know. I just would have. I feel like there could have been a more
strategic version of this, but I feel like he's sort of like biting off Hazel a little bit. I know that's kind of a derogatory thing to say a little bit, but just like, but yeah, I kind of got that vibe, especially since I found this video from Hazel's recommendation, which was a similar thing that happened with Coffee Cakes, and then I got a similar thing from Coffee Cakes where it's like, this feels a lot like a Hazel video. Yeah, okay. I don't know, get that vibe, right? I don't know, it's not a big deal, I guess, but yeah, I did enjoy the video, and I think he has a good cadence, and some jokes are good, and I like the idea for sure of this observation of some media are just way more fantasy oriented. I like that he brought up Arthur, specifically the early seasons. I think he's very correct of he only shows clips, he doesn't mention Arthur. I would have liked there was a section on Arthur, because Arthur's one of my favorite things, but yeah, I just feel like the format was like unnecessary tension for me, where I'm like, okay, can you get to what's the short? Even if he mentioned it at the beginning, and then he talks about it, he's just like, I kind of want to talk about the different media that led me to this idea, or it's like I've realized this trend or pattern of stuff. I would have liked that a little bit more. Yeah, there's my thoughts about that, but yeah, I'm gonna be back for the half-hour stuff.
I did it! It's 5 hours later or something, but I did it! I have 5 more videos to talk about. First is a Hazel video, ranking anime Denny's, and yeah, just kind of going through them in a assortment of different knockoffs of Denny's, and I really did appreciate that she had the thought and nuance to like understand other common dining establishments in Japan, like Jonathan's and Little Anne's or something like that, and the kind of parsing the differences and everything, giving her logic and thought process. It's not just kind of like laughing at the names like, oh, Donnie's or whatever. It has a bit more thought put into it, with like describing kind of the atmosphere, the differences that each scene kind of uses, the food that they have, and things like that. And of course, like, she mentions this in her Q&As that I've started to listen back to, that she does for patrons, that her patrons ask, and then it's on like a second channel that she posts the VOD, which she speaks off the cuff with her wife. I think that they're really like comfy videos if you want more of Hazel's voice, right? She kind of speaks in almost a similar cadence as her scripted videos, but yeah, she's talked about how like she's unlisted or privated a couple of videos because she felt like the amount of research that she could have done, it's like she didn't go far enough with some topics. So it feels like that's sort of reflected in videos like this, where even if it's just like a dumb idea and she kind of acknowledges it as like a stupid pedantic idea, she still takes the time to like kind of see why this Denny's establishment like this is even popular at all. Kind of giving the history of that, and then afterwards kind of making mention of the various tie-ins and stuff, even though it's not necessarily the main feature of the video. Which, yeah, she has this kind of dumb arbitrary like ranking system based on the Denny's menu that she kind of explains as she goes. Although one thing I feel like was kind of missing from this as a ranking video, that I feel is kind of like a part of the viewing experience for me, is having the visual of the tier list. And I know it's not like a Denny's tier list necessarily, but if you're ranking them and putting them in similar categories, it is effectively a tier list that we don't really see what is S tier, what's at lowest tier, and what's like in between, because that what is it called, the distribution, I guess. You're seeing how many S tiers versus E tier versus mid tiers and stuff. That visual does help retain that in the viewers. I know it's obviously not that big of a deal. It's just fucking random ass anime Denny's. Like, it's not like a contest or something. But I don't know. I just felt I didn't feel as compelled about the nuances and the differences and what makes an S tier versus a not as versus like kind of the bad ones. She does at the end have it like a summary at the end of like this is the worst one, these are the kind of the best ones, and it's ones that are just funny to mention, I guess. They're like worth mentioning a second time for their blandness or something. But again, I think I've mentioned in a previous tier video, which was like I would like the visual for that, at least for me, even if some way it cuts back to it or something. I don't know. I think that'd be a good visual through line for the audience who's not like keeping track of this themselves or something. I don't know. Again, I know it's a dumb idea and kind of a pedantic thing to complain about, but I think that just, yeah, that's an element that I feel was missing in this kind of video that I have seen other videos of, and that's an appealing factor to me that it makes me enjoy the video more. That's just a food for thought, I guess. But I enjoyed the video, of course. It's fun. blunova got a video on Giant Robo, the most important mecha you know nothing about. Which, yeah, it is kind of like an under discussed topic. We really kind of only have any, at least I do, the vast majority of people kind of only have ideas about the OVA, and even then we don't have the whole backstory of its production process and the various things. And because I didn't even make the connection that Ginrei was kind of made as a way to fund and like progress the actual OVA, because it was gradually very expensive to make because it kind of ballooned out of proportion. But I think the most valuable part of this video was the discussion of the tokusatsu stuff and where the development of that Giant Robo show came from and its significance in the context of the whole scene at the time. I think it was very insightful, informative, made a lot of sense, had a lot of historical context to it. But the thing I guess I was disappointed in the video, I wasn't ultimately I think it's a valuable, good video. But when I'm looking at this and I know that there's a Giant Robo TV anime series, and then he's talking about the OVA, and then I casually scroll over the timeline to see how much time is left in the video, and it's like already at like the last quarter, and I'm like, oh, he's not gonna talk about the fucking TV show. And then he's like, oh yeah, and then this is part. It wouldn't fully go away. That's a story for another video. I'm like, what? What other video? This is the video. I was just kind of expecting like a full Giant Robo retrospective. At least I feel like that was what was kind of pitched to me at the beginning of this video, almost, or at least what it seemed it was going towards, and that was my size. So it was just but I guess of this misplaced expectations, maybe having something at the beginning of the video being like, we're gonna cover this and the manga and the 90s OVA. And the TV series, there is other things, but we'll leave it for now. And then I would have been, okay, sure. I just won't get my hopes up in that way. And then, yeah. But then, like, instead, he kind of just talks about the significance of OVAs and, like, the history of those and history of mecha. And there's certain... I think it's a little too historically packed with, like, history, I think. Because you can certainly make arguments in places of this is what's relevant to get to Giant Robo. That's fine. It's just, it definitely felt very indulged in the history of this whole thing. And again, I think it was valuable for the tokusatsu part to really put into full context of Giant Robo. But then when it gets to like moves past like this in between part of the tokusatsu has been a long time past to moving into explaining where this OVA came from. And I remember he's, reached out to me and talking about this sort of thing. And the things he brought up to me is like, does this sound right? Does this sound weird? And the stuff that ends up being in this video, yeah, nothing seemed off or weird or like I can get what you're talking about, but like I kind of, in the context of the whole video now, I kind of don't see why you have to really belabor where the progression of giant robots, of like describing Mazinger and this other thing and the trilogy, and then Tomino, and then Ryosuke Takahashi and all that sort of thing. It just felt like, and then OVAs and like the laser disc was this and I'm just like, you kind of don't need that. At least I didn't. Not that not, I'm one person. I'm sure plenty of people can find that insightful and valuable because they've heard of OVAs, but they might not know the origin of them. I think that's fine. And again, I didn't think any of it was like wrong. At least it didn't seem that way to me. I don't think anything necessarily stuck out like that was weird or whatever. But yeah, like in the grand context of me realizing it's like, oh, he's not going to talk about all of Giant Robo, and not even that, but like he kind of like he addresses it. He does talk about how with Giant Robo, all of the things, all the elements that it's coming from with these different robots and
the other Mitsuteru Yokoyama references that are being thrown in, he kind of glosses over. He's like, there's a lot to it. We're not going to talk about it here, type of deal. It's sort of a time management type of thing. The video is already 40 minutes, you know? And I feel like it felt to me it's like you're talking about stuff that I don't think you needed. I feel like you'd have trimmed the fat of this historical context stuff, or trying to be as lean as possible of like what's really important to with this story of the development of this OVA. And then that could have been allocated some time to, I guess, the stuff that I was more interested in, that I know nothing about the TV show. I know it exists, but like I really don't know much about it. And then also, again, even just one of my confusions about the OVA for the times I've seen it is always that, like, oh my gosh, this feels like a much bigger story. Is there a manga to this? And it's sort of like, no, not really. I think the manga doesn't really do any of this. This is its own original thing, and you would never tell if you watch this kind of raw. Not raw like without subtitles. I mean, just like for the first time, and you've never seen any Mitsuteru Yokoyama or whatever. It's sort of just like, oh, it's like, am I missing something? And it's like, no, not really. At least it seems that way. And I'm like, no, okay. You kind of like just trust it, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. So I guess I was just sort of like let down a bit in the direction of the video, I guess, in terms of its focus. But I felt all of it was informative and valuable, especially the early parts with with explaining the tokusatsu and the manga origins and stuff like that. And it's ultimately a great video to have been made. I really appreciate it, and yeah, I appreciate the reaching out for my insight on it. It was nice to see. Yeah, but I enjoyed the video. It was just my reaction. I was like, no, okay, it's personally that's all right. Colleen's Manga Rex: The Rise and Falling of Shoujo Beat kind of gives away though their impressions of because she puts it at the beginning where it's like, we're gonna see if they're still relevant today, and it's like, I mean, I can kind of guess from the time. no, not to be patronizing or anything. I feel bad because she blocked me on Twitter, and I was probably being rude at some point. Sure, like, typical crassness, or it may have been during like somebody quote tweeting her and then my reply or something. I don't know. I don't feel like I've directly whatever. No. But I've also been critical of some of her videos for sure. But I enjoyed this video a lot because I have not concentration, I guess. No insight or frame of reference to Shoujo Beat. I've certainly seen the label before, but I didn't realize that they had actually published a magazine similar to how Shonen Jump was published for a while over here. And I think she makes the fantastic point about, like, why the hell does Shonen Jump get this ubiquitous app that you can read all of this stuff for $2 a month and not Shoujo Beat? And that's really weird. And I guess for me, I guess my question is sort of like, is it because they're all from, like, Viz has the access to Shueisha, but these multiple companies, is Shoujo Beat sort of like, is it a direct copy of another shoujo magazine like Margaret or something, or is it an amalgamation of different series from different magazines, and maybe that's why they can't amass all of them into one unilateral thing, because all the Jump manga are from, and maybe there's exceptions, maybe she's looked into this and I certainly haven't, of Jump, like there are some Jump manga that are not from Shonen Jump. I don't know, I would doubt that, but like maybe that's why it is that they can't really assess or ascertain the rights to these manga to release them in this way digitally. I don't know. Although there very much is kind of a damning smoking gun about Viz's kind of like weird mishandling of shoujo stuff, trying to pass off this Jump Plus title as a shoujo title. It's like, no, dude. And like catching them on their tweets about, like, deleted this tweet about calling something a shonen. They're like, sorry, it's a demographic, but then they called shoujo a genre, and it's like, come on, man. And having this, looking for any Viz
representatives, or the way that their PR, basically, the only person seems to be this like really rude weird guy. And then it's like it's this editor, not even like a real proper PR person. It's like, what are we doing? It really feels like they're fumbling the ball, even though they have these really good titles. I think Colleen, towards the end of the video, she points out the different licensing types of things. Like, why are you licensing this and not like this? You know, it's like they have the access to. This is a really popular title, but it got picked up by Yen Press. But clearly, like, Viz could have gotten first dibs on it. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing of we don't really quite know how all this works 100%. There's logic to what Colleen is saying. I definitely agree with that. And that would be the logic I have to it as well. If I wasn't working in the industry, at least the anime industry, I'm not the one in the room, but I do know from what the limited talks I've had with Mr. Discotheque and everything, it sounds to me that it's really different. It's sort of not not as straightforward or easy as it seems to be. Or straight as the logic that Colleen is presenting here, as sound as it is, I don't know if that's exactly how it works, or it's just like someone outbidded us, or they just don't want to license outside the Japan. Like, okay, or, you know, or whatever. And yeah, then Viz also has its own sales data that Colleen does mention as well. It's like, I guess maybe they have too many Hagio titles, or, you know, there's certain authors and stuff. It's like, yeah, they probably, or they're oversaturated or conflicting. I don't know. It's an algebra that none of us are privy to, unfortunately. And that's not to disparage any of her arguments here. I think it's just like, unfortunately, yeah, it's a black box that it's hard, you know. And the one thing I did that Mr. Jackisboy did mention is sort of just like, anybody who's actually in the industry knows how it works and has been in it for a long time. They know it's available. They know it's popular. They're not stupid. They know they can see it. But there's certain logics and reasoning, or some stuff behind the scenes that they can't talk about, because they can't be this sort of transparent all the time, because some of the answers are going to be very frustrating or mundane or not worth the hassle of making it public, basically. It kind of is what it is. And yeah, but I feel that with her discussion of it, and I think it was really smart with bringing up the closure of it at the time with the recession of the library people, and that there's various groups that were being very outspoken that like this is going to like the kind of like reduction of Shoujo Beat as a distribution in the magazine. They're like, this is gonna severely limit the reach that these stories have, because it's really all about accessibility. And Colleen does kind of tiptoe around the privacy thing, the piracy thing. I'm not piracy type of argument, bringing up Gabe Newell as an accessibility issue, but she's not necessarily endorsing piracy. I think she makes a very valid point of like, no, the guy like response to the meanie who's just like, you pirated our series, that's why you want it. It's like, no, no, we're on the internet, and so it's not even that we read it. We just know it exists. Like, so just because we know it exists, that means we pirated it? Like, are you fucking high? It was ridiculous, man. Like, there's no excuse for the behavior of the Viz people that Colleen brings up here. It's just like, what are you doing? And she's like, you know, this is not like a damn hit piece or something. It's sort of just like, you know, I buy all of your volumes. I'm keeping up with these series that I had certainly never heard of. She's way more of a manga person than I am, that like tons of these stuff have not gotten anime. Which is another point of it that just kind of just like yet another layer onto this prejudice. It's just like they do have like this lower status almost that's not have anything to do with their quality or their broad appeal or not. Like, it's just excessive, just not on TV. And it's not, and it's sort of just it's not just like the West industry thing. It could also, it's just representative of Japan as well. It's just like, well, fuck. Yeah, it's awful. It's just, yeah. But I think this is a fantastic video, pretty thorough. Yeah, and I'm sure none of this will none of, you know, look, I can't remember what I said. It was sort of like a after the fact that I realized she blocked me, because I realized that, like, it was during that when her video was tweeted out by Chihaya Furu author. That's fantastic. That's awesome. And I wanted to express my congrats or whatever, and then that's how I realized she blocked me. I was like, oh, damn. All right. And it's unfortunate. It's what it is. I've talked about it before in another place, in another instance, but it's sort of just like, just mute me, man. It's like, you don't have to tell me that, like, you don't have to broadcast it. I don't know. I guess I'm broadcasting. It's just a private now. I'm the one broadcasting. Okay, fair. I don't know. I'm not the kind of person that revels in being blocked. I just feel it's a stifling of conversation. And if you just don't want to interact with, you don't just mute. And then I don't even know that you muted me. Like, blocking just lets the person know that you don't want to interact with it. I don't know. Does muting not work? I don't know. Whatever. It's not a huge deal. It's just I guess, I feel like it was some sort of reply. I don't remember the specific instance. Whatever. So it's hard for me to apologize for that if I don't remember that thing personally. But I do want to have an open discourse. I'm still wanting to talk about your videos because I think you're a very valuable voice in this space, especially because, like, so many of us are more about the anime side, and you're talking and bringing up all these, like, niche titles that's awesome. They need that representation, and no one else is doing it, right? And you're a positive voice for them. It's not sort of like, you're not like one of like a Bennett or something that has like these kind of a negative slant or whatever. It's important, and I just want to continue. I guess that blocking me on Twitter doesn't stop me from doing this, I guess. But I don't know. I just like having amicable relationships with as many of my peers as possible. So that's all I was thinking. But I do apologize if the thing I don't remember. But yeah. Negative thing I've said in digest or something of another video that I was disagreeable on or with whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I did enjoy this video a good deal. Bennett! Death Note, hour-long video. He's got the bug. Once you make hour-long videos, you can't go back, Oh, man. Making the American edgelord. And he is kind of making this, like, the reason that Americans like it. I like his intro, actually. It's very intriguing because he has this anecdote of wanting to buy a Death Note related merch thing for his then fiance and now wife, and he couldn't find anything. Oh, weird. He couldn't find any Death Note merch. Okay, fair. And then can't argue with an anecdote, I suppose. And then he's kind of just locked in the bag. He says, "Yeah, it's weird. You didn't really bring it up. It wasn't a big deal." But then he realized. Then he sees Simpsons parodying Death Note back in October for their Treehouse of Horror thing, and he's like, "Oh my god, how we really?" It kind of put it into perspective for him how seriously popular Death Note is compared to Japan. Although, it is, how popular is it worldwide? It's kind of ignoring Europe, and it's ignoring other parts of Asia and Africa and South America, and other continents exist. And I want to actually you about that, but it's sort of just like, he framed it as a distinctly American fascination with Death Note. And there's nothing denying about that, for sure. And then he's kind of giving this summary of why it was popular, and he says that it's like uniquely broadly appealing. And I would just want to push against, not the whole thing. I think he makes fair arguments. It's sort of like, it's all of those things of which that was available in the US at the time, right? Because 2007,
you do start to have the internet with torrenting is just kind of starting to gestate, and we're only starting to realize, oh, this stuff is being broadcast in Japan, and then we get it 2 years later. Why? We want it right now. It's around this period, and I'm sure Death Note is a contributing factor to that because they see about this show and they're interested in it. Not to mention, Death Note, I imagine, was being published in Shonen Jump, and we were getting Shonen Jump. I don't remember when. I don't think he mentions really about the manga being available. Whether that was available first or earlier or whatever. It's weird because he's saying he kind of has an expressed sidelining of the manga because there's differences or whatever, but then he really harps on the adaptation as glorifying it light because of how it truncates things. So which is it? Like, are you going to do like a full like comparative thing and really talk about the anime specifically, or are you just gonna be like, no, just anime only, blah blah, and just look at it from that perspective? It just felt very flip-floppy in that way. I did take notes and everything, but overall I get where he's coming from, and it's not a surprising take, but I think it kind of misses the forest for the trees, because what it seemed to me that he's trying to explain or figure out of why this show was so popular in America versus the seeming popularity in Japan, just because he couldn't find merch of it in Japan. Okay. I think he just really ignores just how I don't know, I think he does recognize it, but then he doesn't I don't think he fully acknowledges that it's just a very entertaining moment by moment show has a gripping tension and it's a thriller. It has this really compelling dynamic of Light and L that he just calls L more of a construct than a character, and pretty much ignores him through the entire rest of the video. He has like that one bit where he's describing why he thinks that L is more of a construct than a character. How? I'm not like a big Death Note defender or anything. I'm not like, I can articulately explain why he's a character. I feel like it's self-evident. Of course he's a character. And he's a very compelling character. I think he's a core reason why people liked Death Note. It wasn't because of L or whatever, and they relate to L or something. He basically makes this argument that it coddles some of the most toxic and destructive thought patterns an isolated and socially ostracized teenager can have. And who else were otaku but were isolated and socially ostracized teenagers? Not all of us were relating to Light. I didn't even say all of us. I fucking didn't even watch Death Note until I was in college. And I enjoyed Death Note because it was an entertaining show. That Tetsuro Araki knows how to direct an entertaining show. He somehow makes this damning evidence thing about Araki because, he also directed High School of the Dead and Attack on Titan, and those also have some problematic things that he alludes to. He's like, Attack on Titan, that'll be for a different video. Oh, great. Can't wait for that one. Do you realize all three of these manga are by different people? They're not all from Araki's head or something. Jesus Christ. What are you trying to imply? It's so weird, dude. But it's like, you're completely ignoring. He also is he's assuming that Death Note, to me, it's like, they're just, everyone who likes it are nihilistic teenagers that, were living through the fucking Great Recession. And of course, it was popular in Japan at the time because they were going through the last decades or something. It's like, or it's entertaining. Or it's like a really kind of interesting concept that whoa, and it's a cat and mouse chase. And he's linking to the popularity of Death Note with the popularity of Fight Club, directed by David Fincher, of Seven. Wasn't that also directed by David Fincher? Am I mistaken? Hold on, am I high? No, I'm not high. They're the same director, very talented director. Taxi Driver. I don't know who directed Falling Down. Let's see. He also compares it to Falling Down because it's all these it's all protagonists that are these anti-heroes that are fed up with society, and that's why these are such popular people like these movies for that reason, because it relates to them in some way. I can't deny that that's you know, as much as as much as I'm chastising him for ubiquitously labeling all the people that enjoy these media as the liking this or endorsing this sort of thing, condoning the behavior, I also obviously don't want to broadly assume that not everyone was like. There are some people that probably took it that way, because that's the cool thing about art. You can have all sorts of different reactions to it. Imagine. Look, I think he does make good points, especially with how it's weird that Death Note specifically has this recurring problem that he cites even an incident from last year this was happening, where kids are writing their revenge fantasies and making real Death Notes, and that causing kind of a media stir and a controversy in that town, in that in that school, whatever it is, that confiscates. And he's like, it's like, oh my God, this is the kid, this is the things that this child who wants to kill. Especially, and Bennett didn't even bring it up, the fact that like, this is especially alarming and something that should be taken seriously because of our school shooting problem. He doesn't even bring that up. It's like, yeah, of course they're worried about that, because that could happen. What the fuck? Which is a uniquely American problem, apparently, that it keeps happening to us and not anywhere else. Like, weird. I don't want to make a big political issue now, but that's the thing. Bennett makes it so political. At the end of this video, he's like, Light is Elon Musk. He's Logan Paul. He's Joe Rogan. And he shows a clip of fucking Donald Trump. And then he makes a big, kind of stares at the camera for a few seconds and then drinks a beer. It's just so comical, bro. Like, these are different people. You're just listing people that are like narcissists that you don't like. I really, like, there needs to be nuance here. Like, I'm not trying to be on the side of these people, but it's like, they're different people. You really have to you can't just rattle off a ton of these like very infamous characters that have this loose thing in common when they're not characters, they're real people. These are real people. And again, I'm not trying, we get blatant defense of these people, whatever, like, I get it, but like, it's just such a weird thing to end the video on too. It's not the very end of the video, but it's basically his conclusion. It's you know, it's like, what are we doing here? It's this, I don't know. I thought, for one, I think his comparison to Neil Breen was fair, because it's sort of, it's the danger of like, because he's comparing it to Neil Breen, who has a similar like messianic, I am justice, killing about, you know, being the Sigma, but like, it's removed from all the kind of the cool factor. And the tact or whatever, and the charisma, right? It's all of that removed, basically. I think that's a very sobering comparison, because I do think he has a good point there of like comparing the two actions of these the characters that Neil Breen plays in his movies and Light Yagami. And I think there was a valid comparison, not just because of one is a self-funded film and the other is a well, you know, sponsored anime type of thing. It's not even just that dichotomy. It's just that, like, yeah, you look at the two characters, they're both fiction. You can look at them and make fair comparisons, I think. I think that was a much more level-headed comparison than just rattling off these real people that, like, I don't know. And his commentary on, he says a lot more. He's obviously, well, this is an hour-long video. He's thinking way more about this than I am. I guess this is just sort of my response to it. But to me, it felt like, you know, it's like appealing to the, you know, Light is an appealing character. Oh, that's why I want to make sure I mention this. But like, the difference here with Neil Breen and like Light Yagami, it's not that Tetsuro Araki or even the authors who, you know, it's not Araki's fault that Light is an attractive, smart, charismatic figure. It's the fucking authors and the artists that Obata and, is it Obata and Ogata? I don't remember. I know one of them's Obata, but I forget the name of the other one. It's they're co-author. It's a drawing and a drawer and a writer. Not very well worded. Anyway, they're the ones responsible for that sort of thing. And why do they make this choice when we're supposed to hate Light? well, I don't think we are supposed to. Like, he is doing detestable things, and there is the contrast of that. And I'm not trying to make an argument of whether he has the moral gray, whatever. I agree with what Bennett is saying about his position as the anti-hero. At the same time, though, if you're going to make the character ugly or uncharismatic or foolish in some way, or, you know, in the ways that, like, Bennett thinks is a malicious type of thing, it's because they're doing that because it's an engrossing part of the narrative. Like, yeah, unfortunately, handsome, charismatic type of people make for compelling narratives. And that's not a whole ubiquitously the case. Obviously not. One of my favorite manga is Strongest Man Kurosawa, and he's far from the opposite of any of that. You know, but I don't know what kind of story would have been appealing, to me at least, or to a broad amount of people that the reason Death Note is so popular. I don't know how much that would have worked if the main character Kurosawa here was a serial killer that got this magical notebook that can, like, I don't know how, like, ugly matching ugly, you know, it's the contrast, it's the subverting expectations of a you know, conventionally attractive type of person doing despicable things. And that's also how, like, L contrasts in the way that he has this very erratic, weird mannerisms, but he's on the side of trying to catch this guy, right? That's why he's a character. It's I don't know. And it's just, I felt like there was, like, a complete absence or missing of, like, why did his fiance like Death Note? Not just because he just kind of blanketly says it's because they grew up with it in high school. But there are definitely people in college or adults or something like that are like, wow, this is a compelling, interesting story. Are they immature? They have arrested development? They have some trauma that, like, gets them to psychotically like it or something? No, I don't think that's the case. I just feel like Bennett's making this weird broad assumption about Death Note and its fans that it's just like, you're missing it. I don't think anything he's saying here is wrong or invalid, but it's sort of just too blown out of proportion for me. It's what's wrong with it being a conventional thriller? You know, that I get it. Like, it is an eyebrow raising kind of problem that only Death Note has this thing about children creating the real Death Note and writing these sort of, that's an obviously awful problem. That's real. That's in real life, right? That's like a mishandling of fiction, but fiction can be kind of mishandled in all sorts of ways. Obviously you don't see it that often, but it's like, you know, Winnie the Pooh can inspire somebody to do some heinous, I don't know. You know, it's like the human mind is crazy and crazy complicated and can make all sorts of logical leaps and it's weird. It's so, I don't know. I'm not gonna be like fiction is fiction or whatever, but it's like, it's hard to fully parse that, I guess. And it's like seeing someone trying that is sort of just like, okay, going for it, huh? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but like, I liked I think he's still pretty well spoken, and I don't think he's outright incorrect about certain plotting or stuff besides, like, but it's a red flag. You remember I'm talking about with his last video with Ava, when you bring up this quote about Leiji and then it turns out to have more connotation behind it, I don't trust what you have to say afterwards. And I imagine Death Note fans, when you tell them that L is more of a construct than a character, they're gonna kind of like turn off, like probably shut off the video, or just like, okay, and or at least take what you're saying with a lot more grain of salt. And I know, I get what you want your message to get through and people to listen to you. And so I don't feel like you can make these sorts of statements like that without causing that derision. And then getting to the people that I would imagine you want your message to get across. These people that kind of take Light's message, they take the show's messaging the wrong way, who enjoy Patrick Bateman's character unironically. It was like, you know, he's kind of a loser. And it's like, well, apparently not. Apparently people don't think that. Or maybe there's something about it, right? Well, the thing is, he's doing it at one point in this video, he shows a variety of YouTube videos or TikToks featuring people that are trying to tell you how to be like Light, or
clearly thinking that what he's doing is the right thing and being on his side. And obviously the anecdotal thing in general, I feel like all of us kind of have this implicit. We know there's some people that do think that, they have that they're on his side or that side or whatever because we grew up in that fandom or whatever. I just thought it was weird. He is, doing diligence with sourcing and stuff, but then he's not sourcing the video essays that that apparently glorify Death Note, and he says he does this to avoid them being harassed. He's for anonymity's sake because they're teenagers and don't know better. It's the fucking internet. I'm not saying they deserve to be bullied or anything. The reason I would want to know where these videos are coming from is to verify your claims. Is to be like, let's get what if you're taking these out of context? What if you're just taking the sentence and it makes it seem like the video is glorifying him, but then you zoom out and it's like, but it's a lie, but it's wrong, and it actually understands what Death Note was trying to do. We have no idea because you're not sourcing anything. You could be taking them out of context for all I know. Or to validate this claim that like some of the most popular videos on this platform glorify light. Okay, which ones? How many views do they have? Are they the most successful? Or is it, something like Mother's Basement video on why the chip scene is so effective? Because he's crediting and complimenting Tetsuro Araki's dramatic direction. That has nothing to do with endorsing light or not. That's a pretty I certainly enjoy that video a lot. What are you making these bold claims about our community for? Like, people taking your video out of context and saying this sort of thing. How would that make you feel? And I link the video in the description. I clearly show you what I'm talking about. You can check for yourself, and you can disagree with me in the comments. I'm not going to be like, so I watched this video, you guys, but I disagree with it. There's a lot of bad things, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not going to tell you who made it. Ooh. When you post a video publicly, when it's public, you are open to criticism. No video deserves harassment. I don't even know where Bennett's getting this idea that he's cultivated an audience that would go harass somebody. It will happen it could happen. But it could happen even without him sourcing the fucking video. They could find it and then be like, aha, I found it. And then they're the weirdo. No one is endorsing that. But withholding their names helps nobody, I think. If anything, it just makes it more suspicious, and you're not citing anything. Why? I don't get it. I don't know why. Again, I just don't know why he would think that people who would watch his video on this, which I would assume that he's cultivated a more tolerant and open-minded and not harassing other creators kind of audience. I get the fear, but it's I do not. I think the cons are outweighing the benefits in this instance of withholding the names and stuff. Dude, you know how many of us are teenagers or young adults that are posting videos right now that are getting tons of views, but it doesn't matter what their age is necessarily because it's what matters is the video and the content. I know that's not a broad claim or whatever, but it's sort of just he's also making just the assumption that the people making these videos did they say in the video that they were 18 or whatever? You're just making this assumption that they sound like a young adult. Oh, usually male. But then why was your fiance so into Death Note in the first place? Because it's an entertaining show where she all the fan fiction that was written that you're whoa, that's a lot of fan fiction. It's very popular in the United States. How much fan fiction of that was for the demographic that are enjoying it, not for any political or he's just like me for real. Nobody. Not nobody. Obviously not nobody. I get that. I like the sentiment of the video well enough, and I think that the delivery is perfectly fine. But there are certain things about it, again, that's just sort of certain what are we doing here? I don't know. Just me personally, I guess. Yeah. Wouldn't be a digest without ranting about Bennett video for inordinate amount of time. Is that the right word? I don't know. Yeah. Looking forward to the anniversary, though. The anniversary vid. It's his 15th anniversary of his channel and 12th anniversary of Anime Abandon. looking forward to it. And last, it's a 2-hour monster from Ermi, Moe Monogatari Manifesto. I thought I said Moe Manifesto. I was like, no, not quite. Understanding Monogatari series, and he's made many videos of it, several of which he regrets. And it's all in Spanish. He's like, you'll never see them, and it's like, that's fair. But yeah, it's a 2-hour Monogatari video that, like, look, I really wanted to watch out of respect, because it's a lot of hard work, and something I respect a lot out of, and wrapped up my own big project and everything, and I wanted to pay respects. I've not seen Monogatari, and so his promise at the beginning of the video of just sort of like, it's this puzzle, and it's I've watched it 10 times and I got it, I can understand it, and I think the conclusion is fantastic, where he's talking about, it's like, this is how I've assembled the puzzle right now. And he does kind of reveal this fact about Monogatari that, like, is messy and weird and out of order on purpose, in a way that's sort of an added appeal to it, and you're peeling back layers, and sort of like again, a puzzle, and also just there's so much nuance and detail that comes in from characters not knowing things. And I really relate to that idea, in terms of an appeal, as an appeal of a series, because I was realizing that about One Piece, and I feel like I've never really realized that about other anime before, but One Piece in particular, it's always so striking when it's like, oh yeah, they've never met that character yet, or oh yeah, he didn't realize that until that moment, or whatever, and then it adds some layers to that. It does make me, I will say that this video did intimidate me more to watch Monogatari, 2 ways, because of this, like, I only figured it out after 10 watches, guys, or that was the impression I was sort of getting from it. I'm like, oh, okay. But then it was also that, like, a lot of the descriptions, because Ermi read the novels as well, which is encouraging. I like that he, fully encaps with the source and everything. But he was throwing a lot of, they admit they didn't adapt this part. There's some stuff that's left to adapt. They cut all this part. Kizu's not exactly a great adaptation for this and this reason, which seemed fair. And to me, it was sort of like pulling me in different ways of just like, man, so it just sounds like the novels are better. I don't really want to read the novels. So it kind of, but then he says towards the end where it's like, wow, all the visual striking things that makes me prefer the anime over the novels. And I was like, how I wouldn't have gotten that. And based on how he's describing the themes of the story, and especially that comparison scene where it's like, let me show you the clip of the anime and then what the novel does. And I'm just like, wow, there's a lot more detail here. Although, the one thing I did think about with that scene, with regards to that moment, was sort of just that, like, I kind of like that you can glean whatever you want out of that one look. It's nice that it's not written out for you in such thorough detail. And that's sort of I watched Spice and Wolf. I finished the first season, and I'm still watching. I haven't watched season 2 yet, but I'm stalking. Well, I will. I liked the first season, but it was something hard, a little difficult for me to get into at first, because I wasn't used to the light novel anime. I hadn't watched one in a while, and realizing how dialogue intensive it is. It's like, oh wow. And boy, that just sounds like Monogatari, huh? But at least with Monogatari, it makes it visually interesting. And I like conversations. LGH is one of my favorite anime. I'm okay. I'm cool with that. I can handle it. I like Spice and Wolf ultimately, but yeah, especially with just how much they talk. I just would hope that I would hope there's a balance of dialogue and visual action, of like that the character chooses to do something or looks this way or feels this way, and it's implied, and I don't know how much is really implied in such a complicated puzzle that Nisio has made here. Although what does pull me into interested in the series is, again, towards the ending. I really like that Ermi
uses a space of time to talk about his regrets with previous videos, and even with the gaps in this video, despite being 2 hours, it's like, you know, I'm kind of only talk about the things I can talk about, and then this other stuff has to be kind of put aside, despite wanting to talk about it. And it's just similar, like I guess the epilogue of Monogatari, the Zoku, the Owari Monogatari stuff, I think is apparently the epilogue. Is sort of Nisio Isin's commentaries, like, wouldn't that be cool? What if we tried this? I was thinking about this, and it's like, you know, and kind of using it as in that way, but still kind of progressing the story in a way, almost with Araragi's like processing of stuff. I'm gonna say, look, as someone who had not seen any of Monogatari, all of the analysis of this was followable, but it was just so like, you're in a fog. I couldn't get any sense of where or when or how, or it was just sort of guiding me through this funhouse tunnel. And he's like, I know the way through this funhouse maze. You can just, I'll fall. And I'm only focusing on your hand and you talking and everything. And I'm kind of making peripheral glances, but I'm not exploring it for myself, because obviously that would be mean watching the show. And I was like, sure. And you're kind of following through, but I'm only focusing on, like, eventually it ends up being a bunch of twists and turns, and you're just kind of, I'm along for the ride. And I cannot tell you the first thing of understanding this show from the video. I know you tried for 2 hours, but I'm kind of in the same place I was when I started. I think the things that I did take away from it was that it is not exactly a harem, which I think was really encouraging. I think what was also clear, I don't feel like any of the points necessarily were not clear or some were confusing. It was just like, because they were so out of context for so many of these, I don't know when these characters meet or start interact or whatever, and I'm like, where is this in the map, right? In the let me look at when you assemble a puzzle, you kind of start with the edges first, right? A lot of people, like, some people don't, like, that's fine. But starting with the edges means you get the boundaries and you get, like, the whole thing, and you start to divide it into regions. And in this case with Monogatari, you can kind of, with the different girls, it's like, okay, the girls over here, and this, you know, it's maps, you know, not even that you need maps or something. But I was watching this video feeling like I have, like, as an outsider, I have, like, 2 burning questions that I wish this video would answer, or some video was out there. There probably is, but I just haven't explored. I don't try to get my actual information from YouTube videos. As much as I talk about it in AniTube Digest, right? I would watch it if I knew the person, right? But I'm not gonna look up Monogatari watch order on YouTube unless it's from and I'm not gonna click on any of those videos unless it's from, like, Under the Scope or somebody that I recognize that actually has tried to give rationale and reason. Because the 2 biggest burning questions for me was, like, what's the map, what's the strat here? So, okay, this OVA, this 4-episode, not OVA really, I don't think any of them are OVAs necessarily, but it's like, okay, Koyomi Monogatari, it's focusing on this character. Oh, Black and White, it's referring to this character here. I would have loved that. I would just be like, that's great. You know? And I maybe that's explaining it too easily, or it's not quite the whole. Sure, maybe there's some actual reason that's not as easy as just saying that. But to me, it's sort of like making sense of it. To me, starts with the different seasons and how all of them are important. I believe they're important. I'm not going to say that they're not. I'm like, are they really that important? No, I can believe it. I'm willing to watch all of it if I'm committing to the series. I would just like to kind of know the gist. You know, like, it's like with One Piece, where it's like, I kind of know that there's these arcs, right? There's the Thriller Bark arc, and then the Summer arc, then there's a time skip, and and the breaking it into sagas and stuff. And it's formulaic maybe, but it helps compartmentalize, and we're on the next stage. But my guys, you know. But yeah, I just would have liked that sort of. I know it's basic and other videos have probably done that, and that's not what you wanted to focus on. That's not as interesting to you, and I get that. But I guess as someone who was, the way you were phrasing at the beginning of the video of like, I'm gonna understand Monogatari, great. I'm gonna know where to start. And well, I know it's Bake. I know Bake is the agreed upon starting point for both chronological and release of Shaft or whatever. But I'm sure there is a video, but like, and no one in the comments. I'm sure False Shepherd's gonna write this and be like, I told you, or even I linked a video to me maybe. Look, it's not in my head. It's not in my priority. It's not like not yet at the moment. I don't know. I'm sure. I apologize for calling you out. But it's still. I'm currently on the side of like, I kind of want to watch it broadcast, but I'm sure the chronological's the right way, or I don't know. Kind of would have wanted some even if Ermi does not have to fully explain it, any mention of that different, that would have been like, oh, okay, because obviously he's looked into that, like watched it 10 times, right? I'm like, I would trust you for anything Monogatari. So especially from this 2 hour. The other thing, I'm so sorry I keep jumping around. The other thing that I really took from your video that was like, okay, that makes sense. That's a really good analysis of that, is talking about the sexual fan service and how it's used mainly for characters to reveal themselves and to be more vulnerable. And it's like, yeah, in these particular moments, this sexual fan service thing happens because she's opening up in this particular way, and it's a consistent thing throughout the show. There's a pattern to it, and I'm appreciative that it's not a full blanket endorsement of the stuff that happens, or that like not everything could be explained, and I think that's a fair concession. I'm certainly going to be having that sort of like consideration and rationalization when I'm going to be making my video about a certain other fan service-esque type of show. But I think that was a really comprehensive and interesting way to look at that. But yeah, like, and again, I enjoyed going through the whole series with you in that way and kind of exploring different characters and stuff, but it just felt similarly all over the place and messy as the series itself. And it wasn't until the end of the video did you kind of connect that for me, that it's like, oh, okay, that's why. But otherwise I'm just like, what? Okay. And I'm going through that. The other thing, so it's like the mapping and sort of like, okay, what's the structure here? What's like the point A to point B journey of this character? Like what's going on? All I know is Kizu is the backstory that sort of happens before the events of Bake Monogatari. I think that's the only one that's like. Obviously there's maybe some scenes and stuff, but like in terms of core entries, that's the one that's sort of like at the beginning chronologically, I think. And then Owari is the epilogue. So like I guess the main plot has already happened for everything, and this character in Owari Monogatari, Koga, I forget her name, she's sort of like an aloof, separate character that's kind of guiding Araragi through this epilogue type of idea and resolving some stuff, which is interesting. And I like that. And it's like, okay, gives me map. Nice. I can comprehend it. I get that the puzzle. I can appreciate puzzle, but look, when you get a puzzle, when you look the border, when you're trying to assemble the puzzle, you start with the border, but also when you get a puzzle, it comes in a box. It's like you get the box, and then okay, it's contained, right? So I think there's that sense of like, yeah, there's 77 episodes. Here's the 5, 6. How many? Which ones is how's it broken down? And then you can make the maps for yourselves. It's kind of mundane or whatever, sure, but it's sort of like that. Like lowers the barriers of entry. I think when people look at this map of like, oh, where to start, and the arrows and lines and stuff like that, it's sort of intimidating, especially when there's contention between the two different watch orders. So I had to egg on that point. I apologize. I like repeating myself. The other thing for me that's always confusing about Monogatari as an outsider, and you mentioned this, and then it got like, that's exactly what I mean, where there's a set amount of characters there, so it's really notable that to me as an outsider, it's notable that like Monogatari as a series, the world is very empty. The only characters are the ones that are really important, like the main cast. I really like that. That's really interesting. It's not like most other anime where it's sort of like there's an ensemble or tertiary characters or something and it's a big cast. No, it's a very contained cast. But they have a lot of transformations and they change their appearance throughout the show. And to me, I don't know any of them. So for all I know, the glasses girl, the class president girl, and the cat girl, I just assumed they were two different characters. Like is that a safe assumption to have? You know, because they look very different to me, at least as an outsider. And it's not until you explain it, it's like, oh, that she has this character, and then her ending point is her embracing her black side and white side, and then she has like black and white hair, and it's like, oh, that's also the same character. Okay, because again, out of context, I would have just assumed she's a completely different character. And so to me, that kind of gives it this intimidating factor of like, well, whoa, who's this? And the other different forms and stuff. You know, I kind of would have liked a map. I don't know. It's just sort of just like, all right, it's Araragi. 5 girls or 6. I don't even know how many girls there are. I've watched the 2-hour video and I was like, how many? Because again, I'm getting confused of like, who's this and whatever. And I'm not trying to expect but the way that you're saying this, like, this is how I've completed the puzzle. I'm like, that certainly is a puzzle. I can't tell what it looks like because it looks a particular way. Okay. But then then the old guy. And then is the blonde hair guy a different character? Like, I sound like a boomer. I honestly sound like a fucking boomer when I'm like I have no idea. And I get it. With like, I'm sure people probably felt the similar way when I was talking about Naruto when they had not seen Naruto. Sure. I don't know. But it was just like that was constantly going in my head as I'm watching the video. These two kind of burning questions almost of like, okay, how many characters are there in the whole, and even like the fact that like, their parents are very important. The parent characters are important to the story, but it seemed to me at least you don't really see them. I mean, certainly you didn't show them in the video. They kind of showed different abstract objects and stuff. So I'm like, okay, that's probably how the show interprets them, that they talk about their parents and they are distinct characters, but they don't, at the same time, they're not. They don't have faces or like their parents, or the dad does a particular action, but we don't know. I'm not saying every character you need to know their past or something, but it's like, you know what I mean? They're archetypes. There's just like the impression of the parents. And I'm sure with Monogatari, that's purposeful because it's a very popular common trope where the parents are just absent. They're just gone. Or not even just gone, or just like, yeah, just they don't have a presence in the story, right? And there's some series where it does, and that's its own distinctiveness to it. And that's okay. It doesn't need to have, you don't need to have the parents in every story. It's sort of just, but that's an intentional choice, right? It was just like, we don't know their names, or I don't know if we do, maybe we do, but yeah, you know what I mean? I don't know. So it's like, even just being like, okay, their parents are relevant, but I feel like it's something you could do with, it sounds like an unreasonable choice, but like, list all the characters. I'm not kind of saying that, but it's like, I'm only saying it because it seems like Monogatari is a unique case where everybody that gets a face and a name is important and is like a real, and you can kind of like, here's Araragi, here's the main cast of girls, here's like some of the girls, like his sister and like some other teacher associate or something, some other, like the one girl who's like the one woman who's apparently solved the whole thing and knows everything that's going on but doesn't give all the information or something, some character like that, I don't know. But it's sort of like, okay, it was compartmentalized in my head because I know that the show is not going to do that. I already know that it's not going to do that. So I feel like that would be, I don't know. But again, I don't feel like that's to devalue this video at all. Not like I'm in this opportunity or anything. It was just something that's burning in my mind as that outsider viewer, and to understand it, you know. I'm sure if I had watched the show, I would come away with a certain thing and impressions and stuff. And you bringing the events in the way that you do does bring that clarity to it. And it's like, oh, I do better understand it. I'm sure that's the case. I can't necessarily report on that as someone who hasn't seen it myself. But yeah. I'll need this to say. I would say that, like, at least I can't. It's hard. I did say earlier that I would trust you over a lot of other people in terms of about Monogatari, because it feels like you've proven it through the thought and care put into this. But then that is despite me not knowing Monogatari or anything. And for all I know, there's certain things that, well, that's not quite the case, or there's this other thing you're missing, or you're considering this other piece, and you admit your regrets that, like, you used to hate Zoku or Zoku or whatever, and then it's like, oh, I'm so stupid, like, it's right there, or this in terms of, like, the interpretation of it, or like, the fan, like, why did no one correct me that, like, this piece of information? So it's like you're not a infallible source of information. But I think what you do prove, at least, that does make me trust you, despite me not being able to fact check anything that you're saying, is the earnestness and the willingness to admit those mistakes, and the earnestness of just the way that you're describing it, in a way that it does feel like you care and you appreciate and enjoy the show and the source material as well. And there's a lot of thought and care into that. And so it's like, even if you fall short in some places, I know you're coming from a place that I can trust you. That's trustworthy to me. That's trust. It's not a complete airtight, I am correct all the time. Not even, because even that attitude is untrustworthy to me. Because then it makes me think, and then one mistake will pop the whole thing, right? I feel like it's kind of a dumb. That's stupid. No. Yeah, but yeah, I think that was really great. Not to mention all the amount of work that you put into it, being transparent that this took you so long to make, and then translate into English because you knew that it would be valuable to an English-speaking audience. That's really that's a real dedication, and it's hard to not trust someone with that, I think. Yeah, that's my 18 cents on it. That's a lot of cents here dumped. But I really, mad respect and appreciation for this effort, for sure. I hope you took something from that. But yeah, I really appreciated this. Thank you. Okay, yeah, that'll do it for this installment of AniTube Digest. What the fuck? It's gonna be like fucking over 3 hours. Oh god, I don't even know, because it's like the fourth or fifth recording of this separate recording. Thankfully, I didn't have to redo anything. Yeah, you guys are great. You have a great month. I'm definitely doing this in the halfway point. You wait and see. God. Yo, peace.